Before we begin with the theory, I would greatly appreciate your support by leaving a like, subscribing, and writing a comment so that we can continue to grow and I can continue to bring you quality theories. Now then, let the theory begin. Chapter 1: Shattered Mirrors of the Soul. The life of a shinobi. It was an empty life cycle characterized by constant emotional pain as the assassin gave his being for his state, a tool that lasted only until they were dulled and useless. There was no emotion, no crying for fallen comrades, there was nothing beyond the mission. And once broken, they were discarded like trash. Naruto didn't understand that, and thus Haku felt it his role to enlighten him. It was a cold irony. Haku's heart, as fragile as ice, couldn't bear the thought of killing someone he could have called friend. But any weakness was the sign of a dull weapon. Zabuza had no need for broken tools. You're only worth your use. Those were his words. Anything was better than the despair of loneliness. Is this the first time you've lost a comrade? Haku questioned from the confines of an ice mirror. Naruto didn't answer. Instead, he continued to peer down at Sasuke's lifeless body, bewildered and grief-stricken by the sacrifice the last Uchiha of Konohagakure no Sato paid. His voice echoed shakily, hoping that his silenced comrade might be able to answer. He was a shinobi worthy of honor, Haku noted. He sacrificed his life for you. I didn't deserve it, Naruto murmured, his golden bangs shadowing his stinging eyes. Naruto felt empty staring at Sasuke's closed eyes. What made him the hated container of the Kyuubi worth so much that Sasuke sacrificed his life for him? How could he throw everything away like that? His dream, tossed aside so that he might save a comrade. It wasn't fair. Cold tears fell, but Naruto paid no heed to the absence of the comforting warmth. Haku felt his emotions bubbling over, feeling sorrow for committing such a sin. But he locked his emotions away. This needed to be done. Zabuza's dream was still so far away. With that, he readied several senbon between his fingers, readying to kill his enemy and his own heart. Slowly, he inched out of the mirror. A glint caught the foe hunter Nin's eye. Stopping his advance, he watched as a drop of liquid, like mercury or silver, fell onto the Uchiha's shirt. Following the trajectory, Haku looked up to find twin trails of the glistening liquid falling from Naruto's shadowed eyes. What? Haku was cut off by Naruto, an unnatural guttural growl rising from his throat. Shut up. Something's wrong, he noted. Instincts, honed by years of living as a fugitive, screamed that everything went to hell. It started slowly. Like a drop of rain hitting the ground before the storm. But then the dam broke, a wave of suffocating killer intent flooding the dome of mirrors and scaring Haku back into his ice construct. If not for the safety of his mirror, Haku would have been brought to his knees by rage and bloodlust that would have made even Zabuza weary. I'll kill you. Naruto roared, raising his head. Naruto's cerulean iris is shattered like a rock smashing against a mirror, the color instantly shifting to reflective silver as cracks webbed out from untouched silvery pupils. What the hell is this? Zabuza wondered aloud. Kakashi maybe, no, it's too strong to be his. Palatable rage swept across the bridge like a tsunami, suffocating all swept into its wake. Foul chakra followed closely behind, only adding to the oppressive atmosphere. Is that Zabuza? Kakashi questioned, only for the real answer to hit him like an S-rank jutsu. Shit. It can't be. Did the seal break? Hatake wondered. Briefly, an image of a burning Konoha permeated his thoughts, a memory of a tragedy wrought 12 years ago. Even 12 years later, the Kyuubi's attack on Konoha was as fresh in his mind as the day it occurred. Every word he'd been told by the Sandaime regarding his sensei's death still echoed from time to time. He prayed to whatever deity might listen that Naruto was still in control. Extending his senses, he barely allowed himself to relax. He still needed to be on guard. There was still an enemy Jonin stalking the mists. No, it's all right. Naruto's soul is still intact. Kakashi analyzed. But there's no doubt, it's that chakra. I have to end this. The battle needed to finish, if only to confirm that everything was under control. That chakra being released had Naruto written all over it. That meant little, however. Naruto was a Jinchuriki after all, and Jinchuriki were dangerous for a well-defined reason. Zabuza, can you hear me? I'm a little pressed for time, Kakashi announced, hoping Zabuza took the bait. I understand it's not your style, but how about we end the fun? He released a breath he didn't know he was holding as Zabuza's voice reverberated through the mist. Show me what you've got, copycat. Good, Kakashi said, hoping small talk might keep his mind off the proverbial exploding tag that was his troublemaking student. I see you're as eager as I am to finish this. If only because I didn't know you had a little monster like that with you, Zabuza retorted. Kakashi pulled a scroll out of his vest, throwing into the air and dabbing his thumb with blood. Gravity took a hold, bringing the scroll back into Kakashi's hands where he unfurled it and drew his bloodied thumb across it. Now, Kakashi playfully chastised, no need to insult my student. The scroll near instantly rolled itself close as Kakashi flashed through a set of hand seals. Kuchios, Doton, Tsuga no Jutsu. Sakura realized something was very wrong the moment the rage hit her. Unaccustomed to such intense projected feelings, the pinkette doubled over to dry heave. Looking over at Tazuna, she saw the bridge builder faring as well as her. The old man looked as sick as Sakura, supporting himself on his knees. What's going on, he mumbled out. Sakura merely whimpered. Not even a ninja and he could sense it. What was happening? Were Sasuke-kun and Naruto okay? Or was this caused by that fake Hunter Nin? So many questions, each only serving to deepen her trepidation. Tazuna felt even less comforted knowing that even by shinobi standards this wasn't natural. For a fraction of a second, Haku locked eyes with Naruto. He stared not at the cerulean accustomed to the go-lucky blonde but at the gaze of his own broken reflection. There was something both mystifying and disconcerting to see his own likeness in his enemy's eye. Offhandedly, Haku pondered only one question: what kind of monster have I awoken? Crimson chakra exploded out of Naruto, arcing into the air in a spiral torrent, gouging cement as it circled around its host. A torrent of wind roared to life, scattering the mists and giving a clear view of the picture. Even more menacing, the head of a beast momentarily materialized in the foul chakra, staring down at Haku like a predator eyeing its victim. How can this be? Haku questioned, panic and fear overtaking him like wildfire devouring the brush. Chakra isn't visible to the naked eye. And it's so foul. This can only be the chakra of a monster. The chakra receded back into Naruto, though that did nothing to tame the rage and bloodlust. Once the foul energy re-entered Uzumaki, he slowly began standing, changing. His hair became messier, his nails extended and sharpened, and his birthmarks became more defined, the dozens of needles piercing his being felt out as smoke wisped into the air from the healing wounds. Haku tensed as Naruto turned his attention onto his mirror. He's attacking. With an unnatural burst of speed, Naruto smashed through the ice mirror like it was paper, a trail of silver light emanating from his alien eyes. But Haku was marginally faster still, able to jump into the safety of another mirror just as the attack connected. Even that haven was destroyed seconds later as Naruto rocketed from the other end of the mirror dome into it, scattering frozen ice about. Haku barely escaped out of a shard large enough for his body to shoot out of into another mirror. As such strength, Haku muttered between heavy breaths. And the killer intent. The last member of the Yuki clan couldn't grasp words to define its intensity. Yet, there was also that strange Kekkei Genkai. What were its capabilities? How was it used? Why wasn't Naruto using it? There were so many questions but no answers. It was a wild card that served to only tip the scales in Naruto's favor, but its workings remained a mystery. For that reason, this fight had to end now. With a flash of his mirrors, Haku aimed to pierce the Jinchuriki with a multitude of Senbon. But it was a vain effort as a second later Naruto roared, sending out a concussive wave that misplaced the needles piercing him and cracked the mirrors. What are you? Haku asked, panic beginning to spread. He blocked my attack with pure chakra. For a brief second their eyes locked, hidden stormy gray, hidden needing shattered silver. And then, an anomaly. Flakes drifted from Naruto's eyes, catching the sunlight as they drifted to the ground and disappeared, like the shattered pieces of mirror falling away from a broken frame. Beneath the silvery shards was the crimson of an immature Sharingan, a single tomo in the right and two on the left, though the reflective pupil remained. This can't be happening. Haku mentally screamed. There could only be one implication of such a sight. The mere thought was enough for a shiver to run up Haku's spine. But he wouldn't back down. Not as long as he faithfully served his master. Steeling himself, Haku launched towards another mirror to ready a counterattack, but suddenly jerked to a stop as a crushing grip snatched his ankle from midair. Haku had less than a quarter of a second to gaze downward towards his opponent's crimson sight before Naruto swung him over his shoulder into the concrete. The foe hunter gasped as air escaped his lungs and his ribs cracked. Just as he feared, the fake Sharingan worked as well as a natural one. It was only a second of respite before Naruto swung hack back over, this time brutally smashing the taller boy's back into concrete that cracked from impact. Haku sharply gasped as he felt several vertebrae crack, igniting pain all over his body. With a roar, Uzumaki swung his opponent into the air, inadvertently sending Haku into the confines of an ice mirror. Upset at the loss of his quarry, Naruto leapt after, smashing the mirror but barely missing Haku, who leapt out. The enraged Jinchuriki made to follow, having caught the movement with the faux Sharingan, but Haku flashed his mirrors and stalled his advance. Shit! Haku muttered as he shakily stood. His sense of taste was encompassed with the flavor of a blood, his damaged ribs made it arduous to catch any air, the cracked vertebrae were making movement hampered, but not impossible. If anything, it just hurt. But Naruto wouldn't offer him any reprieve. Crimson light trailing his eyes' movements, the younger boy smashed through the ice. Acting on instinct, Haku countered by rocketing out of a shard down towards Naruto, but the blonde leapt out of the way in a midair spiral. Once his toes graced the cold ground, Naruto pushed off the ground with movement laced with heavy chakra, claws pulled back for a strike capable of disfiguring. Shit, I can't retreat. If Haku turned his back here, even a glancing blow would be debilitating. Haku formed a half-hand seal and swung an arm to meet the attack, a blade of ice extending from his wrist. Hayaton, Hayashoken no Jutsu. Haku mentally exclaimed. Sword met claws in a stalemate, but Naruto pushed into the attack, his nail tips a mere inch from Haku's face. But Zabuza's accomplice dug his feet into the ground with chakra, an act that almost broke his ankles from the sheer force of Naruto's attack. Mustering what strength remained at the bottom of the well, Haku pushed back. As Naruto pushed into the blade, ignoring the gouge in his hand, his eyes shifted. The Sharingan stopped spinning and shattered, paling until those broken, reflective irises returned. For not the last time, Haku wondered what this Kekkei Genkai was truly capable of. Though, a second later, he'd regret such a thought when the shards fell away again, this time revealing stormy gray. His own eyes. In the span of a second, frost-covered Naruto's fingers followed closely by water in the air condensing into icicle-like claws. They grew fast enough to force Haku to leap away to prevent getting stabbed. The retreat, however, was the wrong move as Naruto suddenly flared his chakra, scattering the mists, and jumped after, slipping past Haku's guard. The older boy dodged the initial ice claw stab, earning only several gouges on his mask, but received a left hook glowing with obscene chakra levels that sent him straight through one of his diamond-hard mirrors, skipping across the ground like a rock across water. The boy's mask slowly crumbled as he demurely rose. Looking towards his adversary, he watched as his remaining mirrors, bereft of the chakra that fed them, crumbled as the demonic boy eyed him with something akin to murder with his stormy-colored eyes, his body shadowed from the light behind. Zabuza. Haku thought miserably, I can't defeat this boy. I am. He watched as Naruto dug his ice claws into the ground and charged at him, raking the concrete as he dragged his weapons behind him. Haku closed his eyes, awaiting death as the last piece of his mask fell away. Sakura almost got whiplash from how fast the air changed. 1 second, she felt like she was dying from all of the killer intent, the next she felt a heavy weight come off her shoulders. The change was so significant she actually stumbled. Holy shit, what was that? Tazuna almost yelled. You're a shinobi, right? Do you know what that was? And no, Sakura shakily answered. I've never felt anything like that. Whatever it was, Sakura hoped she'd never see it personally. When the pain never came, Haku slowly opened his eyes to see Naruto's ice claws shatter and fall to the ground, leaving his hand a foot away from his forehead. Looking towards the blonde's face, his messy hair shadowed his eyes, but the mercurial tears once again rolled down his face. Why, you're from that time. Naruto muttered. Why did you stop? Haku questioned. I killed your friend. So, why can't you kill me? Haku's answer was a left uppercut that sent him to the ground. It was nothing compared to that last hit he'd taken, but it was enough to jar a couple teeth loose. He stayed on the ground for several seconds before rasping out, You're going against everything that you were taught as a shinobi. I don't care, spat the blonde. Haku slowly rose, spitting pooling blood from his mouth. His eyes caught Naruto's and he could see the irises again taking up their shattered mirror appearance. To Haku's utter astonishment, the shards of mirror comprising the irises fell away again, this time revealing the crystal blue Naruto was associated with. The pupils, though, still retained the reflective surface. You have a Kekkei Genkai, like me, Haku muttered as he stood to his full height. Naruto shook his head, throwing the silvery tears everywhere. No, I don't. But you do. You used my Hayatan and the Uchiha Sharingan, countered Haku. What? Asked the bewildered blonde. But I'm not an Uchiha. Or related. I guess you two have little understanding of what you're capable of, Haku interjected. It'd be more accurate to say you copied our abilities. Naruto was silent. Is that even possible? Haku's face fell into a sad smile. I don't know either. It's difficult to comprehend what you're capable of. But really, your eyes are beautiful, if a little disconcerting. Thanks. I guess. For Naruto, the situation was difficult to swallow, if only because there was so much to take in. Sasuke was dead, Haku was defeated, he used the Kyuubi's chakra, and suddenly he was being told he had a Kekkei Genkai, and why he was being complimented for his eyes was a little beyond him. Any other person might have been foaming at the mouth from brain overload. But he could worry about his personal issues later. Right now, a broken enemy stood before him, the confrontation had yet to end. Haku had been dreading what was coming, but it was a necessity. Still, you should kill me. It's only right as a shinobi. Too many make the mistake of letting their enemy leave only with their lives. Naruto's face screwed into anger. Screw that. But can't you understand that pain, of being alone, unneeded, not having a dream, the pain of simply being alone? Naruto took an uneasy step back as Haku named his the deepest scar of his heart with such ease. What are you trying to say? The blonde stumbled out. Haku painfully smiled, framed by the blood seeping from his lips. Zabuza has no need for a weak shinobi. You have taken away my reason to live. Anger once again bubbled over. Why? How can you serve a scumbag like that? Why is he your only important person? The fake Hunter Neen sighed. You know, I had other people close to me long ago. My parents. With a sigh, Haku told his life story, how his father feared him and his mother and tried to murder him, only to die by his own hands. Then he went on to explain how he wandered the land as nothing but a common orphan until Zabuza found and trained him. Naruto stood silent as he digested everything, pondering how they could be so alike. Maybe we could have been friends under different circumstances, the blonde finally said. Haku gave a soft, kind smile. Maybe we could have been. Before I ask of a favor from you. Your eyes, what is that dojutsu you used? Naruto was abruptly reminded of his own issues. I don't know. How could I have one? Look at your tears, ordered Haku, still donning his soft smile. The blonde obliged and wiped a tear away from his cheek. Holding the droplet near his face, he saw what could have passed as mercury or even liquid silver. Curious, he ran the fluid between his fingers. The liquid felt cold, but yet smooth, almost pleasant to the touch. He backed towards Haku, who still wore a sad smile. For not the first time in his life, he couldn't prevent himself pondering who his parents were. If he had Kekkei Genkai, that meant he had a clan, right? Your eyes, they're very beautiful. Before he could delve too deeply into ponderings, he returned to reality thanks to Haku's compliment. Thanks, said Naruto slowly. He'd take Haku's word for it, it wasn't like he could see them right now. Now about that favor, when all of this is done, I have a scroll with all the techniques I invented at our hideout. It's about a mile outside of town, the older boy explained. What's this favor? The Jinchuriki asked with caution. A ninja didn't just hand over scrolls with valuable techniques without good reason. Haku's sad smile was the only warning Naruto had. I want you to kill me. The blonde blanched and quickly retaliated, no way. I won't do it. Please, Haku pleaded, almost begging. I have no reason to live. I am but a broken tool, and Zabuza doesn't have need for something that is of no use to him. There has to be another way, Naruto futilely suggested, hoping he could change the boy's mind. Haku wouldn't take no for answer. I wish there was another way. I'm sorry that you have to stain your hands with my blood. Is this the only way? The whiskered blonde tried to reason. Yes, was unhesitant answer. Silver tears fall as Naruto pulled a kunai out of his pouch with a twirl and gripped it. He closed his eyes as he charged for the smiling boy, but instead of piercing flesh as he had been asked, he opened his eyes to see Haku stopping him with a senbon whilst performing a single half seal. Forgive me, but my master has one last use for me. If I had any last wish, it'd be to keep those beautiful eyes of yours safe. With that, he delved into his ice mirror and disappeared. When Haku was finally seen again, he was no longer among the living. When all was said and done, Zabuza killed Gato using a kunai held between his teeth, his arms useless thanks to wounds incurred from his earlier battle with Kakashi Hatake. In the end, Zabuza's life was forfeit to the Shinigami when the mercenaries struck back, stabbing him with a veritable armory of weaponry. The small army of men had then turned their attention onto Team 7, but the villagers, led by Inari, had arrived on time. As the villagers rejoiced, Naruto faded into the background away from the crowds and his teammates. Amidst the cheering and the laughter, he stared into a puddle of water, examining his eyes. His irises retained the crystal blue he was used to, but his pupils maintained the mirrors they transfigured into. Channeling chakra into his eyes, Naruto's irises shattered and paled into broken mirrors. It was humorous in an empty way to see his own reflection in his eyes. Cutting off the chakra, he watched the shards of mirror within his irises fell away to reveal cerulean underneath. If I had any last wish, it'd be to keep your beautiful eyes safe. Haku's last request reverberated loudly in his mind. Naruto looked over his shoulder spying Sasuke being supported by Sakura, both retelling their accounts of the battle, though Sasuke looked like he wanted to be elsewhere, abed while sleeping maybe? Looking elsewhere, he found his teacher also being accosted by several villagers, though his face was hidden by his signature orange book. Good. Only the dead knew of his eyes. To Naruto, his eyes were a revelation, proof that he wasn't just a nobody, albeit a nobody with a demon bound into his gut. And he desired so much to declare it to the world. To proudly announce to the world that he wasn't just an orphan anymore, to brag that his eyes were cooler than Sasuke's, and to show the ninja world he had the makings of a Hokage in his genetics. But Haku's last and only request bound his ego like a chain stays a dog from roaming rampantly. Looking up at the sky, watching the setting sun, he pondered. Even he, despite being the dead last of his class, knew the value of a Kekkei Genkai that copied others. It was the equivalent of a priceless treasure among shinobi. What was to stop someone from plucking his eyes out of his skull for it? Naruto tore his gaze from the evening palette and stared at his reflection in the puddle of water, once more staring at his silvery pupils. Haku, I promise I'll protect these eyes, Naruto pledged. With that oath, the ninja world would never be same. Chapter 2 Mirror Flower Eye. Naruto kept his distance from his team to keep them from seeing his shimmering, mirror-like pupils as they returned to Tazuna's home. He even went as far as to walk slower so that they wouldn't notice his eyes. Every so often his pupils would glint in the moonlight, making it very difficult to hide his new dujutsu. Thankfully none of them, including Kakashi who had his nose buried in his porn, had taken any notice. Naruto quickly narrowed his eyes while putting his hands behind his head in feigned stupidity as Sasuke looked back at him with a sneer. The Uchiha unfortunately had to rely on his pink-haired teammate to help him walk back. He would have chosen the dobe over her, but Naruto had been a royal ass, saying that he didn't want to. Needless to say, Sasuke wasn't in a cheerful mood. With a snort, the Uchiha made his thoughts known. Why the hell are you moving so slow? I'm the one that was almost killed. Why does it matter to you, you ungrateful bastard? I was the one that saved your ass after you got turned into a human pincushion, retorted Naruto while narrowing his eyes, further preventing the group that now had their attention on him from seeing his pupils. Sakura turned onto him with an aggravated look while still helping her crush along. Naruto, be polite. Sasuke has had it rough. Well, at least one good thing came out of this, Sasuke getting his ass handed to him, added the sun-kissed blonde with a smile. Not to mention this cool dujutsu I got during the fight, he added mentally. Now if only I could figure out how the damn thing works. Kakashi looked up from his perverted, orange book and added his 2 cents into the conversation before things could get out of hand. Now you guys. The time for arguing should be saved for a later date. Right now we're tired and we need a good night's rest. Nobody was going to argue. Indeed, they saw better days, and sleep sounded like a very nice thing to do at the moment. Sasuke gave one last snort of annoyance before he turned back to the road with Sakura quickly following suit, leaving their blonde teammate to his thoughts once more. Naruto sighed, knowing that he wasn't going to be able to sleep tonight. He lost someone that could have been a close friend had it not been for circumstances. For him, it was a time to mourn, not to celebrate. The living Maelstrom looked up as he caught sight of the lights of Tazuna's home and immediately began slowing down before fully stopping at the edge of the streaming lights. He didn't know if his eyes would show if he were to step into the lights of the glowing home, and right now, he didn't feel enough like a gambling person to test it. Kakashi turned around as he spied his most unpredictable student suddenly coming to a halt as they entered the household, staying a comfortable range away from the lights. The Scarecrow wasn't sure if he was seeing things, but he would have sworn that Naruto's eyes were glinting. He quickly shook his head to make sure it wasn't an illusion, only to see Naruto close his eyes before he could spy it again. Are you coming? He asked. Naruto kept his eyes as narrow as possible as he answered with a solemn voice. It wasn't something he wanted to slip out, but somehow it just happened. No, I think I'm going to stay out here a bit and think about things. Kakashi stared at him a minute, caught off guard by the tone Naruto used. It was very uncharacteristic for the hyperactive blonde to speak with sad tones. It was just foreign to hear that voice come out of him. Is there something you would like to talk about? The former ANBU captain asked, genuine concern staining his words. Don't worry, Kakashi-sensei. It was just my first battle and I kind of need to sort things out a bit, Naruto answered with as cheer as he could muster. The silver-haired man stared at him with his single eye for what seemed like minutes and then finally nodded. Naruto kept his smile on as he watched his sensei enter the household. It was 1,000 times slower than Naruto would have liked, but then again, his teacher was suffering from overuse of his Sharingan and a variety of gashes. As the door latched, the mask he had put on quickly crumbled, showing his true emotions once more. With a grief-filled look, he walked back to the boardwalk and sat down at the edge of the pier, crossing his legs. Naruto unzipped his jacket to allow the cool ocean breeze to gently caress his body, not unlike a mother hugging a child after a long day. With a saddened look, he stared into the water. He watched as his moonlit, distorted reflection in the waves rippled and shifted, catching the newfound shine of his eyes. More out of curiosity to see his fully activated eyes once more, he added chakra to them, shattering his irises and turning the crystal blue into reflective, broken mirrors. Haku was right about one thing, they were very beautiful. He sighed with his eyes still activated, remembering what he called them, the Miragon. That doesn't even sound cool at all, Naruto told the air with a growl. It needed a better name, it was just too simplistic. He needed something much more eloquent and graceful rather than the haphazard name he had chosen at the spur of the moment. After all, it was a bloodline limit that copied other limits, it needed to be named something awesome. He turned his attention to the moon above, remembering what Haku had told him about his eyes. The faux hunternin had thought they were the most beautiful eyes he had ever seen before. What would you call it, Haku? Naruto asked the sky, hoping that maybe the dark-haired boy would come out of nowhere and give him the answer. Naruto turned his attention back to his reflection, hoping that maybe if he stared at his distorted image long enough that something would fly into his mind. He needed something that could possibly describe the beauty of the eyes, but at the same time, place fear into whomever he'd fight in the future. The blonde sighed as he realized something else. How was he going to explain this to his teammates? He grimaced at the thought of having to tell Sasuke about his silvery eyes. For all he knew, the Uchiha might go into a tizzy at not being the only one in the group that had a limit. But then again, why should he tell anyone? After all, he made a promise to Haku that he would protect his eyes. Naruto then began to wonder what time it was, but if he had to guess, and from looking at the moon, it was easily around 10:15 at night. He sighed as he realized that it was going to be a long night. He needed something to do, but what was there besides training? Well, he still needed to pay a visit to the former residence of the Demon of the Hidden Mist and fulfill Haku's last request, but was that smart? The blonde prankster ran the thought around his head for about a second and made up his mind for what he was going to do for the rest of the night. He was going to find Zabuza and Haku's hideout. But he had one problem: traveling in a thick forest at night was difficult, even with a full moon. What he needed was a way to see in the dark, but he doubted that his mirror-like eyes would allow him to do that. He needed another Dijitsu, one that could at least see better, something like the Sharingan. The Uzumaki groaned under his breath. He still didn't have a clue how to use the different limits he copied, but now was a better time than ever to practice. He set his face into a look of determination as he kneeled down on the edge of the docks and stared into his distorted reflection, counting off ways he could possibly approach this. For starters, he tried to will his eyes to do what he wanted, to give him the spinning tomoe of a pinwheel eye. Naruto growled in annoyance, starting to get aggravated, but his efforts weren't in vain as he watched the mirror shards of his eyes fall out to reveal a Sharingan. He fully stood and began to look around the darkness, his spinning, crimson eyes standing out in the ebony air. Everything took on a higher clarity, giving him a sharper picture of the darkened world around him. Naruto smiled as he began to make out shapes of the objects around him. It didn't allow him to see in the dark, but at least it made everything easier to spot. The blonde turned his attention onto the house to get his supplies and decided that this was the best place to test out his new eyes, since everyone gone to bed and were sawing logs. Tired face. Naruto slowly opened the door and looked around to see that the coast was clear. He took a deep breath as he glided across the floor, not making a single noise as only a trained shinobi could do. His eyes shifted around, scanning the stairs to make sure nobody was out and about, and when he felt secure enough he carefully made his way up them like a ghost. He once again scanned the area around him as he opened the door that led into the room he unfortunately shared with his rival. Naruto smirked as he thought of how easy it would be to pull a prank on the ebony-haired boy, but refrained knowing he was on a personal mission. The blonde quickly gathered his basic supplies and stuffed it into his backpack, staying quiet as to not wake Sasuke. His luck, though, ran out as one of his kunai that he was packing into his bag suddenly slipped out and made a clanking sound capable of waking any mediocre shinobi with half a brain. To him, it was an embarrassment as both a shinobi and a prankster for him to be so careless. Then again, he wasn't using common sense either when he let a couple stray foul words escape afterwards either. Tired face. The Uchiha jolted awake as he heard a loose kunai to fall to the ground, but refrained from doing anything as he heard the silent cursing of his teammate. He opened one eye to see that the blonde was packing things into his backpack. Sasuke kept his attention on the blonde as he watched him walk over to the doorway and then began to scan the room once more. He was caught completely off guard as he saw that Naruto's eyes were crimson instead of crystal blue. Naruto was too far away for Sasuke to see his copied Sharingan. Before Sasuke could ask what was going on, Naruto quickly ran down the hallway without making a noise. Sasuke quickly hopped out of bed as he heard the front door silently close and ran to the window in time to see the blonde maelstrom making his way into the forest, his orange coat undone and flapping behind him as he picked up speed. "What the hell are you doing, Dobe?" Sasuke pondered. Sasuke narrowed his eyes as he ran to grab his own supplies and follow his teammate, but was quickly stopped as his side began to ache, reminding him that he had to rest. He growled as he begrudgingly accepted his fate for the night, but he was going to make sure he bullied the answer out of the blonde when he got back. Tired face. Naruto leapt onto a rooftop in the center of the village and stopped to think about what possible time it was. If he had to guess, it was around 11 o'clock. He would admit that finding the hideout would be easier in the daylight, but he wanted to do this now so that no one would follow him. His Sharingan scanned the sleeping village, looking for a high point that he could take advantage of. To his luck, there was a water tower at the corner of town. He leapt from the rooftops to the tower and applied chakra to his feet to walk up one of the beams until he reached the top, once more scanning the area around him with his crimson eyes. "If I was a ninja and needed a place to hide out in, it would be." He pointed his finger slowly around the area, trying to figure out where a convicted shinobi would find shelter. His finger stopped on a particularly dense thicket of trees just a mile outside of the village. "Right over there." He leapt from his perch on the tower and continued his odyssey towards the hideout. Tired face. Another hour later, Naruto was about a mile outside the village and the air was heavy with mist, making his Sharingan near useless. The fact that it was night didn't help either. With a growl of frustration, he ran to the top of the nearest tree to look at the moon and contorted his face in annoyance as he realized that he was going in circles. He was getting nowhere and fast. A grimace marred his whiskered face as he leapt back to the forest floor and scanned the area around him again, his crimson eyes still having trouble making out shapes. He could now see why Kakashi-sensei had trouble fighting Zabuza. The mist just threw everything off. Naruto growled as he began trekking along once more, but as he turned, he could feel his face collide with a wall. The sun-kissed blonde rubbed his now throbbing head, but felt his eyes lighten up in victory as he saw the wall of a building. He had found the place at last. The demon of the hidden mist had chosen a good place to hide. It would have been annoying to find even during the day. The Jinchuriki circled around, trying to find an entrance, and then let his foxy grin trace his face as he found the front door. Stepping back to take a better look at the place, Naruto took in what was once the former home of an infamously dangerous shinobi. The building actually looked quite intimidating from the outside. Taking a deep breath, he gripped the doorknob and opened it. With a quick flip of a switch, the place lit up. Naruto expected a lot of things when he entered the place, maybe a wall full of weapons, heads mounted as trophies from various missions, or even a torture chamber. He wasn't expecting to find such a simple place. Furniture was sparse, and the only noticeable markers of the room were a couch and a coffee table. The blonde stopped feeding his ice chakra knowing that nobody was around to see him. The Sharingan shattered and changed his irises back to broken mirrors. Then glimmering shards fell out of his eyes, leaving them crystal blue. The pupils, though, retained their mirror-like appearance. Naruto quickly spotted a hallway and began to carefully trudge along it, hoping that the Nukenin didn't have any traps set up. His worries were unfounded as he got to the first room. Naruto assumed was Zabuza's since it was the largest bedroom. It was bare like the living room, save for a bed and a nightstand next to it. He ignored the room and went deeper into the house before he finally got to the room he had christened to be Haku's. Like the rest of the house, it was simple and only had the bare essentials, but the only thing that stood out was a mirror above the chest of drawers with a vase full of white flowers that he couldn't identify. He could tell that it was the boy's room by the hunter-nin mask that lay next to the vase. Being careful to not stir a speck of dust, he walked over to the drawers and quickly began to dig through the clothes. Haku wanted him to have scrolls, and now it was time to start looking for them. He stopped as he opened the first one and began to stare at a set of water goggles that were neatly folded. Looking at them, he could see that they were used often. Probably because the Hyotan user had an unusual fascination with water, but that could have been attested to the limit he made active use of. Naruto cocked his head and continued to stare at them for a couple minutes before his brain concocted an idea. He wanted no one to see his eyes, but that would be an issue during the daytime, but here before him might be the answer to his personal prayers. "Sorry, Haku, but I really need them," the blonde told the air, half expecting the dead boy to suddenly walk in on him. Taking a deep breath, he strapped them on and looked at himself in the mirror. They were tinted, but were light enough for someone to make out his eyes. He had to admit that he didn't look half bad with them on. To top it off, they were much more comfortable than the oversized ones he owned back at home. As he continued to think about wearing them, he felt he was carrying on the Hayatan user's memory and way by doing it. Not just by learning his attacks and tricks. With no one nearby to see his silvery pupils, he took off the goggles and hung them around his neck like a necklace before he continued his search for the ninjutsu scrolls. 5 messy drawers later, he had not found them. The only 2 places left to search were under the bed and in the closet. Looking towards the wardrobe, he could see that it was out of the question as it looked comparatively bare, leaving the bed. He quickly sat his head next to the ground and looked under the mattress. Naruto smiled as he found a tin box. With an excited grin, he pulled it out and opened the lid to see a large scroll next to a set of smaller scrolls, all neatly stacked on top of each other. The blonde felt as if he had hit pay dirt. Naruto held a victorious smile as he pulled his backpack off his back and began to carefully put the scrolls next to his supplies, making sure none of his spare weapons harmed the valuable pieces. Just as he threw the bag over his back to head out, his felt captivated to look at the mirror on the drawers as he saw his own reflective eyes staring back at him. It was very disconcerting to see his own reflection in his eyes. It was like he was seeing into his own soul. He was about to tear his eyes away before his sight caught something else, the flower's reflection. Naruto almost felt hypnotized as he stared at the reflection. After what seemed like an eternity, a smile tugged at his lips as his mind finally solved a problem he had been having since he got back from the bridge. "Yeah, that's a great name for it," he quietly told himself, his smile widening ever so much. Kyokugen. It was almost poetic the way the name rolled off his tongue. The simple word both described the power and the beauty his eyes held, but at the same time, gave the mirrors that were his eyes meaning. He could see bloodline limits, but he could never truly grasp them. He was able to copy them, but he could never be able to call them his own. Mirror flower eye. Man, Haku. Even beyond the grave you're still helping me out, he thought with a smile. Before he allowed himself to leave the room, he thought over everything he laid claim to. The major target of this whole expedition was to get the scroll with all the ice techniques, but along the way he had gotten a hold of a set of water goggles capable of hiding his eyes. He also found a good name for his jujutsu, a name he thought for sure Haku would have been proud of. It was a very productive trip altogether. After taking one last look around him, he left the room and then made his way to the front door. Naruto breathed in the night air before he shattered his eyes and called upon the Sharingan again. To his mild surprise, the shards that fell out of his eyes whenever he activated a limit fell at a much slower pace rather than all at once. 7 seconds later, his crimson eyes began to spin once more. He put this information into the back of his mind, knowing that it was slower to change to a limit than he was used to. Leaping to the treetops, he quickly jumped from tree to tree, able to move faster because of the lack of the mist that plagued him on the way here. Tired face. The blonde finally arrived back at Tazuna's as the sun began to stain the skies with a palette of colors. From the outside, everyone still looked to be sleeping, but he couldn't predict his teammates. It wasn't uncommon shinobi to get up early for training or other things. Before anyone could wake up and discover that the blonde was away for the night, he quickly slid on his new goggles, and with chakra he quickly walked up the wall holding the window leading to his room. Carefully sliding the window open, Naruto made sure not to wake up his prick for a teammate from his beauty sleep. Naruto set his loaded bag down next to his futon and quickly pulled off his jacket, leaving him in a black shirt and orange pants. Before he allowed himself to lie down and get what little sleep he could, he pulled the goggles off and hung them around his neck. Finally, he allowed his head to hit the pillow and not even 2 minutes later he was snoring. Tired face. Sakura walked down the hall to fetch her teammates for breakfast. It was 9:15, and Tsunami was kind enough to make a large meal in thanks defending her father. "Breakfast is ready, guys," she said with a cheery voice as she opened the door. Sasuke slowly got up, popping his back and working out the kinks in his neck from the battle yesterday. He turned to Naruto's bed expecting to see his teammate missing, but was mildly surprised to see a tuft of blonde hair sticking out from under the blankets. Sakura hadn't reacted well to the whiskered boy ignoring her. "Naruto, get the hell out of bed." They both heard him just snore in retaliation and then muttered under his breath, 5 more minutes. In truth, he was wide awake, his sensitive hearing having woken him the moment she opened the door, but he couldn't afford for them both to see his Kyokugen. Until they both left, there was no way in hell he was getting out of the bed. His pink-haired teammate wasn't about to make things easy, though. "If you don't get out of bed, I'm going to." "Sakura-chan, calm down. Go ahead and start eating without me. Just give me couple minutes to get halfway dressed at least," he sleepily muttered from under his blankets. Both of the other occupants in the room raised an eyebrow at the weird behavior Naruto was exhibiting. Usually, he was the first one downstairs for a meal, but now he was asking them to start without him? For a second, they wondered if he was their teammate. The green-eyed girl looked towards Sasuke, who had raised an eyebrow at the blonde, with a questioning glance, but received nothing but a shrug from the ebony-haired boy. Deciding to ignore his teammate, Sasuke slowly willed his sore legs to get him downstairs where the food was waiting. As soon as the door was shut, marking the absence of his team, Naruto threw the blankets off his head and sighed in relief. Like Sasuke, he got up to eat breakfast, but made sure to pull his goggles over his eyes as he left the bedroom. He was still wearing his black shirt and orange pants, but decided to leave the rest of his clothes, including his prized headband, next to his stuff. Tired face. Everyone looked up from their food as Naruto got downstairs, just not dressed in his usual attire, leaving him in his black shirt and orange pants, and instead of his headband, he was wearing water goggles. Without his headband, his hair was even wilder. It was the goggles, though, that caught everybody's attention. When he took his seat on the table, Sakura was the first to voice her curiosity. "Hey, Naruto, where'd you get those goggles?" The sun-kissed genin looked from his food hearing his name spoken and found everybody, including Tazuna and Inari, curious as to how he procured his new eyewear. Excuses were now buzzing through his head like flies on a dead carcass, trying to pick out the best one. That was the one thing he forgot to do last night, was to come up with an excuse. It only got worse the moment Sasuke spoke. "I have a better question. Where were you last night?" That question caused Kakashi to look up from his infamous orange book with a raised eyebrow. So there was more to Naruto staying up last night. Finally, an answer seemed to stick. "I was training last night," Naruto explained with a shrug. "I couldn't sleep, so I went out and got some work done. As for the goggles, I found them fair and square." He didn't quite know how they would react if they discovered that he went to the hideout, but he was deeply hoping everyone bought it. To his relief, Kakashi shrugged and turned his to his ever-interesting novel while Inari and Tazuna went back to their food. Sakura just sighed in exasperation, thinking her teammate was being an idiot like usual. Sasuke, on the other hand, was far from convinced. "Oh really?" he said slowly with his superiority smirk plastered on his face. "Then why were you packing your backpack last night?" Naruto coughed on his food as soon as the words left the Uchiha's mouth. That little question was enough for him to become angry enough to shatter his crystal blue eyes and turn them into the broken mirrors, though nobody could see it because of the tinted eyewear. But the Jonin of the group could feel the chakra spike in the air, sensing it as if someone had activated a jutsu. For a second, the Uzumaki wondered if it was possible to shove an icicle up his teammate's ass with Hayatan. That is, when he learned how to use it, of course. But then again, he might have trouble getting it up there past the stick. It was also to his dismay that everyone's attention turned onto him again, but this time Kakashi fully put his book down and began to stare hard at his blonde student. Naruto might be able to fool Sakura and Sasuke, but it was damn difficult to get the upper hand with a Jounin trained to pick apart lies. This only confirmed the hyperactive knucklehead was hiding something, and the chakra spike only made Kakashi ask more questions. Naruto snorted as he retaliated with another excuse. Okay, I'll admit it. I needed my bag because of all my extra weapons. Satisfied team, or do you also have to tell you? Naruto, relax, ordered Kakashi, his lazy look returning to his eye. You went and did some training last night. I don't have a problem with it, and neither should you too. He directed the last part towards the other two members of Team 7, causing them both to get back to eating their breakfast. Though, Sasuke went back to his business with a scowl. Now, continued Kakashi, I think we all should take a day to relax. That means you too, Naruto. It was Naruto's turn to scowl at the masked man. On a brighter note, he had a small assortment of scrolls that he could look over if he wasn't going to be able to train. Alright, fine, conceded Naruto. But there is no way in hell that I'm going to stay in this house all day. So be it, said Kakashi. Good, thought the copycat. If he's hiding something, then he'll be more willing to talk about it if he's by himself. I just hope that it doesn't have anything to do with the Kyuubi. The blonde of the group quickly wolfed down his food and made a run towards the bedroom to get fully dressed. Is it just me or has Naruto been acting weird since we left the bridge? Whispered Sakura to Sasuke. I mean, he keeps trying to avoid us. Not to mention he was the last one to breakfast. That never happens. Sasuke, for once in his life, couldn't help but agree with her. Naruto had been avoiding them like the plague since the battle with the Nuke Nin. Top that with his weird behavior last night, his brain had calculated one logical explanation: Naruto was hiding something. You know, he whispered back, I think he's not telling us something. Sakura played with the thought for a moment before everything began to add up. Wait a minute. You're right. Now that he had come to that conclusion, he wanted to find out what it was that the blonde would want to hide and not show the whole world. Sasuke could tell that it was something big, or otherwise Sakura would at least know. The day the dobe would tell him a secret, though, was the day hell would freeze over. He shuddered as he realized that he needed help, someone that Naruto would be willing to talk to. Sakura, he said, turning to the girl and snagging her attention, there is no way in hell that he'd tell me about whatever he's hiding. I'm curious, and I imagine that you are just as curious. The cherry blossom rapidly bobbed her head up and down, listening to her crush as if it was a life or death situation. He gulped as he gave the proposition. We're going to have to work together if we want to find out. Sakura's mind only registered two words: work together. Sasuke had just asked her for help. Dreams really do come true. The Uchiha, on the other hand, was slowly backing away. Sakura's eyes had hearts in them and she was now staring off into space. She quickly got her mind out of the gutter as the two members of Team 7 watched their blonde teammate run past them with his backpack in hand. They all turned their heads to the window in time to see the living maelstrom make his way into the forest. Okay, I'll do it. Sakura agreed with excitement. For a second, Sasuke thought he made the worst choice of his life. Unbeknownst to the two other people had listened in on the conversation. The first was Kakashi, who was thinking he needed get to Naruto before they did. Inari was the other. The little boy, on the other hand, thought he could help his surrogate big brother defend whatever secret he was hiding. Everyone turned to Kakashi as the man stood up from table while putting away his book. Please excuse me, he said. I forgot to ask Naruto about something. I better find and ask him about whatever he's hiding before the other two do. The wiry man walked out of the front door, giving the two rookies a chance to plot ways to get their hyperactive, knucklehead teammate to talk. And Inari listened, planning his counter pranks that were sure to throw them off. Tired face. Naruto finally found a good clearing hidden well enough that it would take his teammates a good effort to find the place. With an excited grin, he sat himself on a large boulder that was jutting out of the ground and pulled off his backpack to grab one of the scrolls. His hand rummaged through the bag before he pulled out the first one he touched. Unrolling it, it was a Medicine scroll with various pressure points used for acupuncture. At the moment, he had neither the patience nor precision to practice something like that. He also needed Senbon, a commodity he didn't quite have at that moment. Putting it aside, he grabbed another scroll, but this one was much thicker. He smiled as he unrolled it to see a taijutsu scroll. The only thing that put a damper on his excitement was the fact it was a medic-nin-based fighting style. But he quickly felt his excitement return in full as he saw that it was changed to make it a unique form of fighting. Though it was precision-oriented. Like the other scroll, he put it to the side knowing that he would wait to learn it. The next scroll he found put a grin on his face that threatened to split his head in half. It was a water ninjutsu called water release, water guillotine technique. If it was possible, his grin widened as he read a note on the scroll that said it was easily a B-rank technique. Unfortunately, it was precision-oriented as well, which knocked it off of his list of things to practice for the day. He once more dug into the backpack like a child digging for the freshest cookies at the bottom of the jar, and pulled out another scroll, this one larger than the one that containing the water release, water guillotine technique. Skimming over what it was a scroll that contained Haku's notes on Hayatan, along with the chakra theories behind it and how to properly combine the chakras. That was going to be something he needed. If the scroll containing the ninjutsu on it had Naruto begging to learn it, the next one he pulled out of the bag had him drooling in anticipation. The attack was incomplete, only having been completed 3/4 of the way, but it had to be the most powerful water jutsu that Naruto would lay eyes on. It was easily S-classed. The chakra it required was huge, the control it required was huge, but who says that the blonde wasn't up for a challenge? Or a leg up on his rival? Naruto then realized something: Haku hadn't completed the attack before he died. He now felt compelled to finish the attack where the dark-haired boy failed. Just as he was about to pull out the Hayatan scroll to finally give it a quick look over, a voice rung through the clearing: "I didn't know you read so much." Naruto looked like a kid that got caught with his hand in the cookie jar, both figuratively and literally since his hand was in the bag. Looking up, he caught sight of Kakashi lazily reclining on a branch above him with one of his legs dangling off the side of the branch. Surprisingly, the man didn't have his nose in his book. In place of his book was a look of curiosity and intrigue. "They were presents from a friend," Naruto retorted while holding a look of suspicion. "Really?" asked Kakashi, the info spiking his interest. "Were those from Iruka? Or someone else?" Naruto quickly answered with a lie: "They were from Iruka-sensei." "Well, I'm just glad that you're doing as told and actually trying to relax." "There's not much to do around here other than training though," the maelstrom muttered. "Yes, I would agree, but if you don't give your body a break you can burn yourself out." Kakashi paused for a second before he asked another question. "So what's with the goggles?" Naruto shrugged, sticking to the lie he had told everyone at the breakfast table. "I found them and I thought they looked cool." The older ninja just blinked for a second, feeling like he had just experienced a serious déjà vu. "Funny. My old teammate also wore goggles," he said, recalling all his distant memories of Obito. "Really?" asked Naruto, his curiosity starting to come out. "Oh yeah," Kakashi smiled under his mask, knowing that he broke down some barriers and was a step closer to finding out what his student was hiding. "As a matter of fact, you two act a lot alike. The only difference was that he was late to everything by at least 2 hours. He was my best friend, sort of like you and Sasuke, except I acted like Sasuke." "You acted like Sasuke?" Naruto questioned, thoroughly surprised that their sensei had acted like his prick of a teammate once upon a time. "Yes. I was by the book all the time, and I often thought the mission was more important than my teammates. I regret acting like that every day of my life, though." "What made you change?" Naruto started to regret asking the question as he watched his sensei's single eye suddenly show sorrow. Before he could apologize, the silver-haired man answered with a hint of emotion in his voice. "Obito passed away. You could say that I act the way I do to keep his memory living on." Naruto's visage quickly went south as he started to remember his battle with Haku. He never knew him and his sensei were so alike in that aspect. They both were carrying on the memories of people that had taught them powerful lessons. It was the only way he could stay close to the person he could have called friend. "You know, Naruto, if there's something that's bothering you, you can tell me. I really want you to be able to trust me, said Kakashi, hoping to establish that bond with his student. Even though he hadn't been showing it lately, he really did care for him. The blonde was so much like Obito that it was almost unreal, and now that he thought about it, he also looked a lot like his old sensei. He didn't want to play favorites like some other teachers did. Inside his mind, Naruto was having an inner struggle whether or not to trust Kakashi. He wanted so much to talk about his feelings, the weight of knowing that he had lost someone that was like a friend to him, but having no one to talk to about it. Then there was also his bloodline limit. Half of him wanted so much to brag to everyone about it, but it was possibly dangerous since he had a rough idea of what it was capable of. Another thing that gave the Scarecrow extra points in Naruto's mind was that the man was willing to talk about his past to him when his teammates weren't around. He wanted so much to have someone other than Irika that he could lean on, but could he trust him? You wouldn't tell anybody, right? He finally asked, taking a gamble with the masked man. Of course. I promise that I won't tell anybody, but if it's dangerous, I may have trouble trying to keep it, Kakashi answered, finally glad that he could establish a teacher-slash-student relationship. Naruto nodded in understanding before he took a deep breath and allowed his mask to slip a bit, now donning a heavier face that told of hard times. Before the battle. I met Haku. He tried his best to not allow tears to stain his eyes, but he knew it wasn't going to be of any use. Naruto pulled off his goggles knowing that he wasn't going to help what tears slid past his eyelids. Kakashi jumped down from his perch and took a seat next to Naruto, waiting for him to continue his tale. We could have been friends. We had so much in common. Finally, the blonde could feel the sensation of frigid metal running down his face once more. Kakashi could feel for Naruto and felt some of his old memories of people he knew and lost come to the front of his mind. As he was thinking of his old comrades, his single eye widened a bit as he caught sight of a tear of liquid silver drip from Naruto's face onto his jacket, staining it metallic. Finally, his student opened his eyes to reveal his silvery pupils, catching the Scarecrow completely off guard. He had no clue that the blonde had developed a Dijitsu. I just wish that things could be different, then maybe he could be alive and I wouldn't be alone again. Another silvery tear dripped onto his jacket as Naruto finally let out some of his emotions that he had been keeping bottled up for the past couple days. As much as it was eating Kakashi to find out about the boy's unique eyes, right now wasn't the best time. At the moment, his student needed comforting, having lost someone that he had considered a comrade and friend. Something that he himself could attest to. Naruto, he tried to comfort. Listen to me, there are still people out there that care for you. You got Irika, you got the Sandame, and you got me, or at least I'm hoping you allow me in. I know it's rough to lose someone. Trust me, I know that feeling more than you think, but you can't dwell on it. It will just eat away at you. You need to move forward and try to live for the future. Naruto sat there for a minute trying to digest what the copycat had told him. It was true, he still had Irika and Gigi, and now he felt as if he could add the silver-haired man to the list. But it was hard to lose someone you had even a small attachment to. Kakashi sat next to him, waiting for his student to collect his thoughts. Death was never an easy thing to deal with, especially when it was someone you knew. Zabuza's student and Naruto obviously had a bond, but both had to act as shinobi at that moment on the bridge. One of them had to die either way. Such was the way of the ninja. Why does everyone have to die? Asked Naruto as another silvery tear ran down his face. The Scarecrow just shrugged as he answered, death is just more universal than life. Not everyone lives, but everyone has to eventually die. It's another lesson that people have to understand. The one-eyed Jounin thought it was funny how he had switched places with his sensei. He was consoling Naruto like Minato had done to him countless times when he had a down day or just needed some advice. Kakashi felt a sad smile tugging at his lips at how the roles of a person could quickly switch. Maybe he should try to talk to his student like his old sensei used to do to him when things were particularly hard. Naruto looked up with his Kyokugen eyes as he felt his sensei put a hand on his shoulder, beckoning him to make eye contact. All of us walk down a path where each of us will meet death at the end of it. Sometimes it's little more abrupt than we would like, but it's always the same. We meet the same end. As a shinobi, it can be cut extremely short, but that's why we should live without regret. Haku did. He was fighting for something he truly believed in, and we should respect that. Naruto let a sad smile trace his lips as he listened. Kakashi was right, death was just another part of life that everyone would have to deal with eventually. Thanks, sensei. I think I understand. The said man did his signature eye smile. No problem. Now, about your eyes. Naruto felt like shrinking as he looked at Kakashi's eye. We'll worry about them later. I think it's something that we're going to have to talk about with the Sandaime when we get back home. Got that? Naruto nodded his head in affirmation. Yes, sensei. Good. I wouldn't mind talking about it right now, but if you developed a new bloodline limit, there's no telling who might be listening in on us. The Scarecrow's thoughts drifted to his other two students who were probably planning how they were going to uncover the truths. So, for the moment, it will be our little secret. The blonde nodded his head once more. It really did feel a lot easier to hold a secret when someone else was sharing it. The living maelstrom watched as Kakashi slowly stood up and worked out the kinks in his back. For the moment, I think I'm going to hit the rooftop and read my favorite book. So, by all means, keep on reading those scrolls. I'll find out how you got them when we get back to Konoha. With a slow stride, the copycat walked out of the clearing to think about things. He could understand Naruto's emotional pain, it was something he was going to experience eventually. But what he really needed to think about was the Jujutsu Naruto somehow developed. A chapter of Makeout Paradise was sure to help clear the mind. Tired face. At Tazuna's house, Inari was carefully listening to every detail of the plans Sasuke and Sakura were exchanging as they whispered to each other from across the table. And he had a counter-plan to every single last one. Tomorrow wasn't going to be a good day for the Haruno or the Uchiha. Chapter 3: Sugar and Ice. Sakura walked down the hall towards the boys' bedroom to get her teammates up for breakfast, all the while going over the plans she and Sasuke had concocted to get the blonde to reveal his dark secrets. They were geniuses. That's all there was to it. Their teammate was going to spill his whole life story by the time they were done with him. Opening the door, she made her announcements. Breakfast, guys. And Naruto, you had better get up now before I beat your ass. It's rude to be late. The said blonde yawned loudly as he pulled the blankets off his head to reveal he had slept with his goggles on. Sasuke got up as well and raised an eyebrow at the weird gesture of their teammate wearing his newfound fashion sense with him to bed. You wore those things to bed, the Uchiha found himself questioning. Naruto nodded his head in a yes while yawning again and working the kinks out of his back. Without saying so much as a good morning, a hyperactive member of Team 7 left his bewildered teammates behind in favor of being the first one down to breakfast. The moment the pink-haired girl and the ebony-haired boy got downstairs, they could hear Naruto wolfing down his food at speeds that were inhumanly possible. Kakashi saved them the trouble of berating their teammate, all the while flipping a page in his book. Naruto, I may not be a specialist in manners, but I do know that you're eating way too fast. Sorry, sensei, but I want to get done so I can train since I couldn't yesterday, he answered excitedly in between bites. There was a reason he was so excited to train today. Naruto wanted to practice his Hayatan, but hadn't been able to due to his teacher's strict orders to relax. And not to mention the fact he still had to look over the scroll of Hayatan Jujutsu, having spent the remainder of the day yesterday studying the theories and physics behind the ice abilities. His eating pace was much more subdued by the time the remaining members of Team 7 made it to the table. As Sasuke sat down, he motioned for the start of their plans with his eyes. His partner in crime nodded her head as she turned towards the blonde demon container to begin a basic interrogation. It was straightforward and a good starting point, but if push came to shove, they had better ideas at their disposal for later use. Inari watched the duo with a careful eye, keeping track of every single last one of their movements. It was attempt number 1 and it was time to commence the counterattack. Just as Sakura opened her mouth to ask a question, she felt something wet collide with her face. Sasuke looked to his partner to see why she was stalling, only to feel his eyebrows go past his hairline as he saw morning's breakfast decorating the side of her face. Her eyes grew to the size of saucers, realization of what had happened hitting her like an akimichi trying to get to an all-you-can-eat buffet. Naruto didn't make things any better by falling out of his seat laughing. The Haruno's neck muscles could be heard as she slowly turned her head to the culprit, wearing a look of pure hatred. Everyone soon joined to see Inari trying his absolute best to look as innocent as possible. Sadly, he could tell that he wasn't getting very far and pointed his finger towards his grandfather who was blissfully reading the morning paper. Kakashi made a midair snatch, grabbing Sakura's ankle and abruptly ending her jump across the table to choke the young boy, all the while not looking up from his book. Naturally, the cherry blossom struggled against the older man's grip as she tried to crawl across the table to continue her vengeance while Inari retreated under the table to avoid getting murdered. "Nice one, Inari," shouted Naruto as he laughed. It was enough for the enraged girl to turn her attention to him with a screech, "Don't encourage him." Her teammate should have stopped there, but it was one of those times that Naruto felt his shut-up filter suddenly stop. "I'm just saying, it was good prank, and I'm just jealous I didn't think of it first." It was faster than the human eye could track. Sakura abandoned her original target and pounced on the blonde, bringing him down to the ground while pounding him in any humanly possible way. His screams of agony could now be heard ringing through the house. Kakashi just sighed at their antics while Sasuke could feel himself wincing with every hit the dope took, almost feeling bad for the unsuspecting idiot, almost being the key word. If only Naruto had used his common sense. Inari, on the other hand, pumped his arm in victory under the table. The first of his planned sabotages had been successful. Naruto walked into the forest around the house with his backpack in tow, intent on finding a place to train away from prying eyes. Soon, he came upon a clearing with a small pool of water he could use for his Hayatan. An excellent spot for practicing water manipulation without any nosy teammates nearby to prod into his business. Taking off his bag, he opened it up to pull out the scroll with Haku's notes on Hayatan, detailing its mechanics and workings. With one last quick scan over it, he gave himself the okay to begin. In the bushes behind the unsuspecting blonde were the other members of Team 7, planning their next move since Plan A didn't go according to their hopes. It was time for Plan B and Sasuke was now giving his pep talk to the pink-haired girl. "Whatever you do," ordered the Uchiha, "don't lose your temper. If that happens, he might become too afraid. Don't blow it." Sakura bobbed her head up and down as she burned their basic plan into her brain. It was simple: try to flirt with him a bit, be a little nice, make him drop his guard, and then have him start to spill the beans. Sweet and simple and down to the point, it should work. With the final prompt from the Uchiha, she quietly got out the bush and slowly made her way to Naruto, who was oblivious to her presence. She tried to put on a friendly smile, but it just seemed a little fake to her, making her a little worried that the sun-kissed blonde wasn't going to buy it. Her curiosity ebbed away at her nervousness the closer she got. To her mild surprise, Naruto was reading a scroll, something that she never known him to do. He just always seemed too hyper to want to read a book. Against her better judgment, she inched a little closer to see if she could make out anything on the parchment, earning Sasuke's nervous/annoyed looks directed at her. She could only make out a couple words from the distance she was, words like manipulation and ice. And one word she couldn't identify nor had she heard of altogether: Hayatan. The blonde's ears twitched when she got close enough, signifying he sensed her. Much to her slight panic, Naruto rolled up his scroll as fast as possible and then turned to her with one of his foxy grins painted on his face, causing her squeak in mild shock. "Hey Sakura-chan! What are you doing here?" he asked. For a second, words escaped her mouth, but she quickly recovered and tried to save what little dignity she had left. I was just a little worried," Sakura began while trying to wear something akin to a puppy dog pout. "You've been acting weird lately and I just want to make sure that everything is okay." To sweeten things up, she began to slowly decrease the proximity between the two, catching Naruto off guard. Sasuke was in the bushes wearing his patented Uchiha smirk, knowing Naruto was going to cave at any second. For Naruto, this was a little unexpected. 1. Sakura was being nice and rapidly closing the distance between them, and as of right now, he felt his 12 inches of comfortable clearance being rapidly used up. 2. She was starting to look cute for him, something that he only imagined he would get in his dreams. Right now, 2 and 2 weren't adding together properly. I mean, I just hoping that there's nothing wrong. You can always talk to me about anything, she sweetened her voice even more, trying to sugarcoat it. Inari, on the other hand, abandoned his original plan of just jumping in and distracting Naruto when he saw how they were trying to get the blonde to talk. Oh no. He had a better one that was sure to make the Uchiha feel like he was on fire, literally. The little boy snuck up from behind the unsuspecting Sasuke while holding a box of matches he procured from the kitchen. With an evil smile, he lit one as quietly as possible, and, while his target was distracted, he waved the lit match under the dark-haired boy's bottom, trying to give a new meaning to the words liar liar, pants on fire. Naruto's look of nervousness quickly changed into something that made him look as if something awful had passed under his nose. Sakura was about to panic at the thought of failing until Naruto made his disgust known. Is it just me or is something burning? The bubblegum-haired Kunoichi gave him an odd look, but it quickly changed as she caught a whiff of the smell in the air. Actually, I think there is something burning. In the bushes, Sasuke was sweating and he couldn't help but wonder why his butt felt like it was on fire. Suddenly, he felt his pants burst into flames, causing him to panic and make a dash towards the pool of nearby water, completely abandoning the plan to get Naruto talking in favor of not suffering third-degree burns. The other two members of Team 7 watched as the Uchiha ran past them in a blue blur with black smoke trailing behind him. It would also probably be the first and only time Naruto would hear him scream like a girl. The sizzling sound of a fire being put out could be heard for a couple seconds and then followed by a deep sigh of relief. As soon as the smoke cleared, Naruto keeled over with uncontrollable laughter. It was worth more than 1,000,000 bowls of ramen to see Sasuke running around with ass on fire. And what were the odds that he would see it today out of the days in his life? Sakura, though, had slapped her hand over her eyes in embarrassment. That had just ruined Plan B. It was back to the drawing board. Kakashi looked up from his porn as his three students walked in for lunch. Sakura was once again holding up Sasuke, who looked as if he was having trouble standing in the first place. Naruto, on the other hand. I still can't believe that your ass caught on fire. What the hell were you doing? Did you fart out a fireball or something? The blonde said in between his laughter while gripping his backpack. Sasuke scowled murderously at his teammate, but kept his mouth shut. He still didn't have a clue as to how his posterior had experienced spontaneous combustion anyways. I'm going to grab some new clothes, announced the Uchiha, walking by himself towards his room with pain. The scarecrow's eyebrows rose past his hairline as he saw Sasuke's bottom charred black from the remains of a fire. From the looks of it, the burn wasn't very dangerous, being at least akin to particularly nasty sunburn. Sasuke wasn't going to have an easy time, though, if he chose to sit down. Well, that was funny, said the grinning blonde, but I'm going to go and train some more. I don't think I'll be back till dinner. Kakashi nodded in his head in approval before he added in his 2 cents, that's fine, but don't overdo it. I plan on us having a team practice after dinner. Got it. Naruto shouted with a mock salute. With those parting words, the hyperactive knucklehead of Team 7 dashed towards the forest with his backpack swaying as he ran. Sakura sighed as she walked upstairs, looking for her partner in crime to relay what she had seen from Naruto's scroll. Her teammate's absence gave them time to work on a plan C since their last one didn't quite go so well. She knocked on his door and got the permission to enter. The pink-haired girl almost laughed as she saw a fully dressed Sasuke struggling to sit on his bed as softly as possible. With one final pain-filled look, he finally accomplished the task of trying to relax on his bed. Well, that didn't exactly go according to plan, he started. No, it didn't, but how the heck did your pants catch on fire exactly? Sakura asked. Sasuke just shrugged his shoulders, still not quite able to pin the identity of the culprit. It couldn't have been Naruto, he was watching him the whole time. If it was him, then he had to admit that the blonde truly had the greatest prank skills on the planet. But hell would freeze over before he said that out loud. Anyways, I did catch a little bit of what Naruto was reading, the cherry blossom mentioned. This had immediately caught the Uchiha's attention. Naruto wasn't one to read, or to pick up a book at all, but for the blonde to sit down and actually read something was like Sasuke dancing in a pink tutu. Those kinds of things just don't happen, but the impossible did occur and Naruto remained calm enough to actually skim over a scroll. What did it say? Asked the ebony-haired boy, not bothering to keep the curiosity out of his voice. I could only catch a couple words. I think they were manipulation and ice. There was this one word though. She thought as she put her finger up to her chin. Well, he asked impatiently. Hyoton. Yeah, that's the word, she announced. Ice release, thought the Uchiha skeptically. That had to be a joke. No shinobi could just create ice, it was impossible. A ninja could only work with the 5 basic elements. Then he remembered his battle with Haku. His mind recalled how the foe Hunter Nin created the ice sunbon and the ice mirrors. He also remembered the brief mention of the word Hyoton during the intense battle, but it wasn't explained any further. He honestly thought those were some of the coolest jutsu he ever saw, but he was inwardly upset that his Sharingan wasn't active at the time to allow him to copy those jutsu. Both of the techniques he had witnessed were astounding and the Ice Mirror jutsu easily had S-class capabilities. But were there any secrets behind the attacks? Was there a deeper reason why these ice jutsu weren't known anywhere else in the world? Better yet, and this was if his hypothesis proved true of the blonde somehow getting them, how did Naruto procure the scrolls that contained them? Sasuke-kun, asked Sakura, trying to snap him out of his thoughts. He shook his head for a second to try and get back to the real world. This secret dug a little deeper than they had originally thought, that much was confirmed by Sakura. Sorry, I was just thinking about something, Sasuke said. Hey, do you think that there's something a little deeper going on than we think? Sakura took a seat on the floor so that she could think, looking underneath the underneath. At first glance, nothing seemed out of the ordinary other than Naruto taking time to read something, the weird goggles, and, lastly, his self-isolation. So far, Kakashi was the only one who was able to talk to Naruto without any problems. But as a girl, she understood secrets. The key behind them was that they always centered on something that a person didn't want anybody else to know about. Finding what that center point was always led the way to unlock the mystery. It was like trying to solve a puzzle. A major problem was that some people took it to an extreme to hide things, making it really difficult to get even a small hint. Do you know where some paper is? She asked. It'll be easier for us to try and add things up if we write down what we know. Sasuke nodded and carefully moved to his backpack, making sure to not harm his still sore butt. He didn't find any paper, but he tossed her a blank scroll with pen instead. Before she wrote down anything, she tried to recall all the abnormalities that Naruto was displaying. First was the goggles. He had not taken them off since the day after the battle, nor did he explain where he got them. Second was his self-isolation, which had started minutes after the battle. Third was his unusual behavior, like reading and taking his sweet time to get to breakfast, basically, him doing un-Naruto-ish things. There was one other thing that her mind had conjured, but she tried to shove the thought into the back of her mind with no avail. She didn't want to remind herself of what had happened on the bridge. It was a nightmare that she didn't want to relive. But did it have any relevance to Naruto's secrecy? Sasuke-kun, do you remember your fight with the Kirin? He nodded in affirmation, allowing her to continue. You wouldn't mind telling me about it, would you? He raised an eyebrow at her unique request, trying to figure what that had anything to do with them trying to find out Naruto's secret. What does this have to do with anything? He finally asked. Trust me, Sakura assured. I'll tell you after you tell me what had happened. With a defeated sigh, he recalled the entire battle, giving her every little detail he could remember. He did make it a point though to make sure he didn't indulge her about him telling Naruto about his brother. The Uchiha didn't miss a beat of his recount outside that. Sakura kept silent for a long while, trying to digest what she was hearing. Whatever had happened when the dark chakras swept through the bridge, her teammate had been out like a light during the duration of the moment. She took a deep breath as she got ready to explain to what had happened during his unconsciousness. Alright, this is what happened while you were out. From there, she explained everything, how the air itself felt hollow and devoid of all life and how it felt as if one had to beg for mercy to someone that wasn't there. Sasuke's eyes remained widened throughout the explanation, still not believing what had happened. The Uchiha heir sat there for a minute trying to add everything together while Sakura made herself busy writing down all the weird stuff that had happened, having decided that the weird feelings on the bridge could count as another piece to the puzzle that was their enigma of a teammate. So far, their list included the weird chakra on the bridge that no one witnessed, Naruto wearing goggles, his avoidance of his team like the plague, except Kakashi, and his unusual behavior were the only clues they had to work with. Sakura looked down at everything she had written, trying to add everything together. Sadly, this was worse than any algebra equation she had done before. What was Naruto hiding that would have to do with the goggles and the weird chakra? It then hit her, it was something that could come out of the left field, but it was still a very real possibility. Sasuke-kun, this is a long shot, but I have an idea that would explain some things, she said nervously. He looked up from his ponderings, impatiently waiting for what she had to say. Well, what is it? She gulped as she ready to explain. Is it possible that Naruto could have developed a bloodline limit of some kind, a dujutsu to be precise? I mean, that would explain a lot about the goggles and the weird chakra. Sasuke felt his eyes widen in surprise at what she suggested. It wasn't possible that the dobe could all suddenly develop something out of nowhere, it had to be. He wanted to be the only one on the team to have a limit, but if Naruto had one, it gave him a leg up, something he absolutely did not want. But as it pained him to say, it made sense. It did explain everything, but if the blonde did have something, what kind of limit was it? We need to get those goggles off, he decided aloud. Naruto had returned to the clearing where Sasuke had caught his ass on fire to train. Looking around to make sure that no one was around, he pulled off his goggles to reveal his silvery pupils. Adding chakra, he shattered his eyes, bringing the shattered mirror-like irises into play. With one last thought, he willed for his Sharingan to make an appearance, and with that, the shards fell out of his eyes in an instant. Again, he recalled that at Haku and Zabuza's hideout, his crimson eyes took exactly 7 seconds before they appeared, but it did it instantly once more. He shoved the thought into the back of mind with a shrug of his shoulders and summoned his clones. Looking at them, he expected to see hundreds of pinwheel eyes, but instead found that none of them had the Kyokugen to begin with, not even the silvery pupils. Hey, why don't you guys have the Kyokugen? He asked to no one particular. All of the blondes turned to each other with looks of surprise, before all of them turned to the leader and shrugged their shoulders, all bearing faces of confusion. I think it's just another thing that you're going to have to ask Gigi, one of the clones suggested. Oh well. Come and get me. With a large battle cry, all 100 of the clones charged at their master. Naruto was having the absolute time of his life using his Sharingan. He experienced a weird sense of déjà vu every time he saw one of the clones try to attack him and quickly counterattack before any of his miniature visions could come true. Naruto could now see why Sasuke bragged so much about the Sharingan. It was so cool. To be able to see things before it could happen in a split second was so awesome. He could see how an enemy ninja could fear such a limit. He smirked to himself while dodging a punch, knowing he had a limit that could make people even more fearful. The Sharingan could copy jutsu, but his eyes copied limits, making him even more dangerous. He could have the Sharingan and whatever else was out there. The possibilities were endless for him. Finally, after 4 brutal minutes of taijutsu, Naruto collapsed to the ground, breathing hard. Despite the Sharingan being able to read attacks, it only worked on what you could see. Thus, much to his chagrin, the army of clones got smart and began to attack his blind spots. He was going to keep that in mind whenever he fought Sasuke. After several seconds, he could hear Kakashi's voice ring through the clearing. So that's what your limit does? The scarecrow jumped from one of the trees as he helped Naruto into a sitting position while studying the Sharingan that was spinning in his eyes. It looked normal, but the major difference was the mirror-like pupils. So, the Sharingan can copy jutsu, but your eyes can evidently copy other bloodline limits? Naruto slowly nodded his head, still trying to get his breathing under control. That's absolutely astounding. There's never been a limit heard of like this one. I can understand now why you want to keep it a secret. A lot of ninjas would be after it. Yeah, said the blonde slowly. How many limits have you copied? The scarecrow asked. 2. Sharingan and Hayaton, said Naruto with pride in his voice, finally getting his breathing under control. Right now, I was just training my Sharingan and was going to finally try out Hayaton for the first time after I was done. Can you turn off your eyes? Naruto did as he was told and stopped feeding his ice chakra, causing the crimson eyes to stop spinning and then to be replaced with shattered irises. The shards quickly fell out of his eyes, once more returning them to crystal blue. I see. To stop feeding your ice chakra is to deactivate the limit altogether. It seems that some bloodline limits require that they stay active in order to be used, Kakashi said more to himself than Naruto. Hey! Is it okay if I train with Hayaton now? The blonde asked, finally hoping to try out his friend's abilities. Kakashi got out of his thinking pose and gave him an eye smile. Oh, sorry. Yes, by all means. Just as long as I can stay and watch. Naruto gave the okay, allowing the older man to take his spot on one of the trees above while leaning on the trunk, looking on in curiosity. It was really astounding that such a limit existed, and it was also dangerous. So many countries would want to steal it just because of how amazing it was. Naruto was once again the most unpredictable ninja alive, gaining an ability that many would kill for. The blonde was about to shatter his eyes to activate his other limit until he felt something twinge in the back of his mind, a sixth sense of someone nearby. Looking towards his sensei, he could feel a signature of some kind coming from his covered eye. Kakashi-sensei, this may sound a little funny, but I think I can sense your left eye. The scarecrow just blinked in surprise. How's that possible? I don't know, I could just sense it, the blonde yelled back. Kakashi put his hand to his chin as he thought about it. Naruto just sensed his eye, but not him. It surprised him that he couldn't sense the Hataki white chakra, which was classified as a limit. But this possibly meant that a sixth sense of some kind was. Naruto's eyes slowly widened as he slowly began to sense Kakashi himself. The eye and the scarecrow's body had completely different feelings though. Naruto, can you sense me? The blonde bobbed his head up and down as he stared at the man trying to decipher what he was feeling. He could sense a familiarity of some kind between the wiry man and him. That's what I thought. You're not sensing me, you're sensing my bloodline limits. You have a bloodline limit? Kakashi nodded his head. Yes, I have two, one from my father's family and one from Obito. I'm going to jump out on a limb and say that your eyes allow you to sense other bloodline limits. Sort of a way that you can copy the most limits possible. Naruto stared at him for a bit, trying to take in the info before his mind got other ideas. Would I be able to copy yours? The former ANBU felt his eyebrows go into his hairline as his student's words entered his ears. Did the blonde just ask for permission to copy his bloodline limit when he could just copy it without problems? Why are you asking? You know you don't have to, he asked with curiosity laced into his voice. Naruto just began to rub the back of his head while smiling sheepishly. Well, I just want to be rude like team and copy everything without asking first. That's very nice of you, of course you have my permission. Kakashi was genuinely surprised with Naruto. He never expected him to ask for his right to copy anything. It did, for one thing, show the difference in personality Sasuke and he had. Sasuke was willing to make it a game to copy things just so he could avenge his clan. Naruto on the other wanted to earn his power. Sweet. That's 3, shouted Naruto while jumping up and down and then calming down while adopting a curious smile. So, what does it do? It's known as the Byakuya chakra. It's a unique chakra that's colored white along with a whole arsenal of abilities. Do you remember my battle with Zabuza? Naruto bobbed his head up and down once more in excitement. His sword should have easily destroyed my kunai, but it didn't. That's because I coated my kunai with a very thin layer of it. Let me give you a full-on demonstration. Kakashi pulled out one of his kunai and then began to channel a small bit of his unique chakra into the blade, giving it a white aura. Then the blonde watched as his sensei lazily threw the kunai at a tree, sending it through the trunk and then through the rock that was behind it, finally coming to a stop on the trunk of a tree behind the boulder. How the announced Naruto with wide eyes. It's simple, the kunai was sharpened to an extremely high degree. If had I thrown it any harder, it would have gone through at least 5 more trees before it finally stopped. Byako chakra is much denser than normal chakra, requiring a lot less to use any jutsu. And let's be honest, for a jounin, my reserves are kind of small for where they should be, but because my chakra is denser. It requires even less chakra for even higher powered moves, finished Naruto excitedly. That's right. It has other more mysterious properties that even I haven't unlocked, but I'll tell you the other abilities later. So are you going to copy the limit or not? Naruto nodded, still wearing his smile, before he shattered his eyes once more and began to stare at Kakashi for a couple seconds. It was an amazing feeling. Naruto could feel his eyes working as he stared at the man, copying the limit and adding it to his growing arsenal. The blonde let out a smile as he felt a click in the back of his mind, telling him that he had copied the limit. Got it, said the boy, giving his teacher a thumbs up. Excellent, I'll start training you in it later, but for now, I think you should be practicing your Hayatan. I'm going to go ahead and sit down and see just to see how things work. With that, the blonde closed his eyes to help him concentrate manifesting the ability. Finally he opened his eyes to allow the shards to fall to the ground, but he adopted a confused look as he felt the shards slowly drift out of his eyes, like the time when he had gone to the hideout. 7 seconds later, he had Haku's stormy eyes. Kakashi watched everything intently. He had just found a major weakness to the Kyokugen, but he needed to experiment to confirm his suspicions. That would be a later time though. Once more, Naruto shrugged it off and walked towards the pond to practice his limit for the first time. Stretching his arm out, he remembered Haku's notes and began to slowly allow his chakra to saturate into the water. Finally he wielded it to move and smiled as a small tentacle of water began to coil its way into the air. Naruto then forced it to come towards him, separating the water he was controlling from the pond. He smiled as it got in between his hands, shifting and contorting like it was some form of clay. Now came the hard part, trying to freeze it. His memory recalled from the scroll that Hayatan was the mixing of wind and water chakra, but he had absolutely no idea on how to manipulate elemental chakra. With a grimace, he just settled with himself to shove more chakra into the water, causing it to explode into his face, thoroughly soaking him. Kakashi snickered, earning a yell from the blonde, "It's not funny." It was from my vantage point. Anyways, if this is an elemental bloodline limit, explained Kakashi, then it's just a matter of combining the two chakras. It's not as easy as it looks, mumbled the blonde. You're right. It is one of the most difficult forms of training out there, but for people with elemental chakra manipulations, such as Hayatan or Mokutan, it should come natural to you. It's just the matter of splitting the chakra and then recombining it out of the body. Try again, but this time split the chakra into 2. Naruto scowled but complied. Once more, he willed some of the water to his palms and began concentrating on splitting the chakra like his sensei told him to. When he did, he felt his eyes widen a bit. The chakras both had a very different feel to them. He could feel the water chakra inside the liquid he was contorting and the wind chakra on the outside in the air. With a shove, he put the wind chakra into the water, causing it to freeze into a perfectly round sphere. He smiled as he held it in the air, having just mastered the basics of the limit. Yahoo! Naruto was about to leap in the air for joy, but his lack of concentration caused the ice ball to obey the laws of gravity. It fell to the ground, right on top of Naruto's foot. The blonde boy let out a loud yell as he began to hop on one foot while trying to cradle the appendage. Kakashi naturally let out some laughter as he watched his student hop on one foot while cussing the air blue with words that would have had a boat full of sailors blush in embarrassment. If only he had a camera. The jounin cut his laughter short to see that the sun was 3/4 of the way through the sky, signifying that it was dinner time. Turning to Naruto, he told him his observations. Naruto, I think it's time for dinner, but before we go to the house, do you mind if I test something with your eyes? The blonde stopped dancing on one foot and looked towards his sensei. No problem, but what do you want me to do? Oh, it's simple really, just use the Sharingan again. Naruto nodded and shattered his eyes, once more turning his irises into the shattered mirrors. Like last time, he willed that his eyes change, but to Kakashi's and Naruto's surprise, the shards fell out of his eyes, glistening like a snowfall in the sunlight, not all at once like usual. 16 seconds later, the Sharingan was spinning in his eyes. What the hell? Naruto was cut off as Kakashi voiced his observations. That's what I thought. It seems we have found a major weakness to the Kyokugen. And what's that? In order for you to use your various limits, your body has to adjust to the change that each one requires. For instance, my Sharingan doesn't work properly because, for one, I don't have the memory capability or the proper frontal lobes that the Uchiha have. Thus, I have to use a lot of chakra to make up for this. You, on the other hand, use the limits as if you had them your whole life, but because your body must change, it becomes more and more exhausted, thus it takes longer in between limit changes. If this is true, continued the copycat, when you first activate Kyokugen and change into a limit, it's instant because your body is a blank slate. After that, you get one instant change into another limit, but even further after that, it starts with 7 seconds from what I've seen and then jumps to 16 seconds. I imagine that after that it would be somewhere past 30 seconds for a fourth change. This can be dangerous, keep that in mind because in the world of shinobi, a couple seconds could easily be the difference between life and death. When in battle, make sure to change as few limits as possible. Suggestively, find at least 3 limits for possible situations and stick with them, but change as little as possible. Okay, started Naruto, still trying to grasp what he was hearing. That's all and good, but how do I restart the time thingy? Rest, obviously, answered Kakashi with a shrug. It's probably very hard on the body to all of a sudden change your anatomy. Now that I clarified this, we should head to dinner before everyone gets curious. With a nod from the boy, both teacher and student began the trek back home, but the blonde made sure that he grabbed his backpack before he forgot it. You two are late, was the response of Sakura as the goggle-wearing Naruto and the ever-tardy Kakashi stepped into the house. Naruto smirked as he sensed the ever-moody presence of Sasuke sitting at the table, thanks to his newfound sixth sense. After he entered the house, he quickly went upstairs to put his backpack with the rest of his belongings before he came downstairs to join the dinner with Tazuna's family. He came in time to hear Kakashi's lame excuse, "Sorry, we both just got lost on the road of life." Sakura and Sasuke both rolled their eyes at their eternally late teacher and quickly got back to their half-eaten dinner. Naruto quickly rejoined everyone and quickly piled on the food to his plate. Interestingly enough, Inari kept a suspicious eye on the Haruno and Uchiha. So far, the two hadn't made any new plans he was aware of, but he wasn't about to let the two get away with anything. For Sasuke, it was time to implement Plan C, his final plan. Sakura and he hadn't discussed their third plan together, but he had been planning this one without her consort for a while. This plan was sure to succeed, he wouldn't allow it to fail, otherwise he'd be the new village idiot. After all, the third time is always a charm. Naruto, said Blonde, looked up from his food to Sasuke to see that he was wearing his signature superiority smirk. Want to make a bet? Did his ears pick up what he thought he heard? Sasuke was making a bet with him? It was too good to pass up. I'm game. Let's hear it, spoke the smiling blonde. Me and Sakura against you in a fight. Sakura felt her drink go up her nose. After coughing out everything that decided to go down the wrong tube, she turned her wide-eyed attention to her teammates. What the hell was Sasuke planning now, and how did it involve her? Alright, accepted Naruto with his foxy grin, but Sakura thought herself going crazy as she saw his pupils glowing past his goggles. What's in it for me? I teach you one of my own jutsu, maybe the fire release, grand fireball technique. Okay, I like what I'm hearing so far. But you have to take off your goggles if I win. Naruto's smirk quickly changed into an angry skull. If looks could kill, Sasuke would have a boiling pile of puke. The bet was so great that Kakashi put his book down as he waited for his student's answer. This was both a miracle vine from heaven in that it would put the Kyokugen in a full-on test, but it was also a weed from hell because if Naruto lost, shit would hit the fan. Sakura felt her eyes widen as she caught on to Sasuke's third plan of action. He was willing to gamble and attack Naruto's pride to get him to reveal something. It was genius, but she doubted that her blonde teammate would even come close to winning Sasuke's Sharingan. But to both Sakura and Sasuke, this proved that Naruto was hiding something under those goggles. Did Naruto really develop a bloodline limit of some kind during the battle with Haku? Naruto was also weighing the odds. He had 3 limits at his disposal, 2 of which he had yet to fully master. And it was 2 against 1, but he accounted for Sakura's lack of any truly nasty jutsu. The odds at the moment were being balanced on a scale. The fire jutsu, even though it was cool, didn't really matter to him. What really mattered was the ability to smother Sasuke's face with dirt, and he wouldn't hold back just because Sakura was on his side either. All was fair in love and war. When and where, prick? Naruto asked, holding a look that meant business. Sakura felt her eyes widen as she heard Naruto take the bait. Kakashi, on the other hand, just sighed. He once more found himself cursing his students' competitiveness. Sasuke continued smirking as he felt his plan working. Tomorrow at noon near the spot that Kakashi-sensei trained us to climb trees. I guess this means that I'm going to have to cancel team practice tonight, conceded Kakashi. Naruto quickly finished his dinner in less than 2 bites before he ran upstairs to grab his trusty backpack once more. He needed at least 1 or 2 Hayaton moves mastered before he could fight. Where are you going? Asked Sasuke in a mocking voice. To train. What else, asshole? The Uchiha scowled, but Naruto let his foxy grin loose as he poured salt on the wound. I would set you ass on fire, but it seems someone beat me to it. Sasuke's scowl quickly became an angry grimace as he saw the blonde leave but did nothing to stop him. Payback would come when he stuck the blonde into the dirt in the fight tomorrow. Sasuke-kun, the aforementioned boy turned towards a nervous-looking Sakura. You wouldn't mind training me a bit tonight, would you? The ebony-haired boy nodded his head in approval. Right now, she needed to get stronger, or otherwise she was just going to be a hazard on the field. Kakashi did count the rivalry that his students had as a mixed blessing as he watched the exchanges they had. It made sure that they got stronger quickly, but it sure was annoying as hell. He just hoped that Naruto could keep up because he knew that Sakura was going to pack some firepower when Sasuke was done with her. Inari was as pissed as a rattled hornet's nest. He knew what the Uchiha's plan was, but he couldn't interfere this time because his older brother figure had wanted it. All he could settle for was to watch and hope that Naruto won. Kakashi sighed once more as he dismissed himself from dinner to head up to the roof for thinking. He had a lot to go over. At the clearing that Naruto situated himself in, a grin that threatened to split his face in half was painted across the front of his head as he looked at an open scroll. It was the Hayaton scroll, and the first move he was looking at was awesome. It was called Ice Release, Frostbite, and it was badass. Chapter 4, The Mirror Flower and the Pinwheel. Naruto could be found lying on the grass in the clearing with his goggles off, staring into the sky. It was a clear night and the now waning moon was a beautiful sight along with the stars that dotted the midnight sky. The moonlight was gently glimmering off of his silvery pupils as he stared towards the heavens. He was at peace. Right now, he could show his beautiful eyes to the world and not have a care. The blonde didn't have to wear the mask he always did, here it didn't matter. Despite this, he had a battle in a couple hours against Sakura and Sasuke in a 2-on-1 match, and he just mastered the Hayaton jutsu he wanted. They wanted to see what was under the goggles, but he just wanted the thrill of victory, and to smother Sasuke's face with it. But right now, that didn't matter to him. He just wanted a chance to give his body a break so he'd be at full potential for the battle. Hopefully, he could change into the other limits he gained without a hitch. He knew he didn't want to, but, nonetheless, he slowly willed his aching body to rise and to train more. Naruto wanted to learn that water release, water guillotine, but it required a good deal of practice. In the end, the ability to splice an opponent in half would be well worth the effort in the future. Sakura looked down at her aching, tender hands as she took a break. She looked up as she felt someone pour water onto them, soothing some of the discomfort she was experiencing. Sasuke stood over her, screwing the cap back onto the bottle he poured the water from. You should be a little more cautious with that technique or otherwise your hands will just get worse, the ebony-haired boy warned. He took a seat next to her, as he decided to rest after having just completed the training for fire release, dragon fire technique. His pink-haired teammate was also training with a new fire move he happened to know, but her reserves were so small that it was the only thing he could teach her without her suffering from chakra exhaustion. Do you think we're going to win? Sakura asked out of the blue. Sasuke turned to her bearing a calm smile. How can we not lose? Unless Dobe throws something out there we don't know about, the battle should be pretty easy. Yeah, I guess, but what if we're both right and he does throw out this random bloodline limit? At that, the Uchiha shrugged, don't know, we'll just have to adapt when it comes, but seriously, what could it be? Both of them sat in silence as they thought about it. Naruto had to have a limit, but what was it and what could it do? There were so many outcomes to the question that the two gave up thinking about it several hours earlier. Okay, let's get back to work, but expel the fire this time. Don't hold it or otherwise your hands will get worse, coached Sasuke as he slowly stood. Sakura nodded and quickly joined him. Both members of Team 7 got into a basic battle stance and went back to their training. It was almost morning and they had to get ready for their battle with Naruto. Kakashi sat on the roof of the house as he waited for morning to arrive. If any other jounin got close enough, they would have gawked in disbelief at the fact that the man didn't have his nose in his perverted book for once in his life. Honestly, there was too much to think about to try and relax. He spent the good deal of the night thinking about the Kyokugen. It was an awesome limit that many would be very hard-pressed to even match. So many people would want those eyes, whether by stealing it or by arranged marriage. The latter of the two would be a product of the clans of Konoha trying to get a hold of it. The Scarecrow was pretty sure someone from the Yanamaka clan would try to have a go at it, speaking that they had a female around Naruto's age. He wasn't so sure about the Hyuga clan, but he was pretty sure the elders would make a push for it. There were others, but he doubted they would have as big of a voice. Then there was the Kyokugen itself. The basic abilities alone were impressive, such as being able to copy other limits and sense people with a limit. Of course, it also had its drawbacks. Naruto's skill with each limit was limited and he would need to train with each one before he could fully master them. The eyes also only allowed one limit at a time to be used, and the blonde could only change limits 3 times before it got dangerous due to time constraints. Also, his clones couldn't use it either, which was a serious limitation. If anything, these problems balanced out the good in the Kyokugen. It may be a miracle vine at first glance, but the weaknesses also made it a weed from hell. With practice, though, it could be a very powerful weapon. Finally, there was Naruto's attitude towards it all. Sasuke viewed the Sharingan as a means for vengeance, the blonde on the other hand viewed his as a powerful gift and as something not to abuse. He asked for permission to copy the Byakuya chakra when he could have done so without it. It just showed the difference in their personality. Looking up towards the horizon, he sighed as could see the palette of colors slowly painting the sky, signifying morning's arrival. The battle was soon and he needed to watch it to make sure nobody killed anyone. With that final thought, he jumped off the roof and walked into the house to get some coffee. Sakura and Sasuke walked up to the house to grab some breakfast near 8 o'clock. They needed to get some food into their stomachs before they fought their blonde teammate, otherwise, it would be a repeat of the bell test. The green-eyed Kunoichi mastered the fire technique Sasuke decided to teach her. It was basic, but with her small reserves it was the best he could offer. She was nowhere near the chakra monster Naruto was, and she doubted she could pull half the attacks Sasuke could, but she made do. Both of them were greeted by their sensei. "Ah, I see you guys came in for breakfast. Have you seen Naruto yet?" asked Sasuke as he took a seat at the table, shortly joined by Sakura. Kakashi nodded his head in confirmation. Yes, as a matter of fact he was here about an hour ago to eat, but he quickly went back to his favorite clearing to train some more. Sasuke nodded as he dug into his food. Both Sakura and he were tired because of the lack of sleep and a large amount of training. So, both of them decided they were going to relax before they walked up to the clearing where the fight would take place. Inari could be seen at the other end of the table, death glaring the Haruno and Uchiha. He couldn't just sabotage the battle or otherwise his surrogate big brother would get mad. But that didn't mean he could come and watch, he really did want to see Naruto go full out in a battle. Alright, I guess I should be a good sensei and give some advice to my students, spoke the copycat as he sat his eating utensils on the now empty plate. This quickly got Sasuke and Sakura's attention. What did they need to know about their blonde teammate they didn't already? He only used the shadow clone technique and relied mostly on taijutsu. They would admit that Naruto could come up with some brilliant plans on the wire, but that was if he'd hunker down and think or keep his temper in check. I imagine you're wondering why I'm doing this, continued the copycat, but let me be the first to say that Naruto has experienced a spike in strength ever since his battle with the fake hunter Nin. My only advice is to not underestimate him, or otherwise you'll lose. How has he gotten stronger? Asked Sasuke with a grimace. This didn't sound too good. Kakashi thought about it for a moment before he told them, training. Lots and lots of training. I do believe he added another jutsu to his arsenal, but I can't be sure of that one. But again I say, don't underestimate your opponent. That is the quickest deciding factor in shinobi battles, keep that in mind and you'll do great. It shouldn't be a problem, spoke Sasuke with a smirk. I mean, I do have my Sharingan and Sakura has learned a new technique. The scarecrow just shook his head in exasperation. True, the Sharingan is a powerful tool, but nonetheless, you should not take it for granted. Get cocky and you're going to lose. Naruto can understand this, it took him less than 3 seconds to understand this lesson. Hell, he discovered it on his own without me having to tell him, thought the copycat. I guess you're going to have to learn some humility, Sasuke. It's sad that you're called a genius, but Naruto has learned, by far, more than you. Now that I have given you my advice, I'm going to find Naruto and give some that he may need, he said as he excused himself from the table. Wait, why are you helping both sides? Asked Sakura. Kakashi put a hand up to his face as he thought about it for a minute. Because you're all my students and I want to give you all equal chances. Now, if you'll excuse me, I will be heading to talk to Naruto. Oh, and relax or otherwise you'll burn out your bodies before the fight. Both of them nodded as he left. Sakura left to go up to her room to take a nap while Sasuke did likewise after they were done eating. Naruto was quietly sitting down with his legs crossed as he stared at the pond in front of him with something akin to annoyance. For the past couple hours, he trained to use the water release, water guillotine, but to say the move was difficult to master would have been an understatement. The water needed to splice things had to be absolutely sharp, otherwise, the most that'd be accomplished was making the opponent wet. This required fine-tuned chakra control in order to sharpen the guillotine's edges, something Naruto severely lacked. Supposedly, one could sharpen them enough to slice a metal kunai in half, but again, it required control. Despite this, the blonde continued through the night to get it. He had gotten down the basics, but the sharpening part was killing him. You look like you had a good night, noted the copycat as he walked into the clearing. Naruto looked up with a smile on his face, but it quickly changed into an aggravated scowl as he stared back at the water. I've been trying to get this water jutsu down, but I can't sharpen the edges, explained Naruto. Mind telling me what technique it is? I might be able to help you, offered Kakashi as he sat down next to him. It's called water release, water guillotine, but like I said, I can't sharpen it. Sounds like a good move, never quite heard of it though. That's because Haku invented it before he died. It's a B-class jutsu. The wiry man gave a low whistle as he listened to the info about the attack. Not only did it sound good, but it was obviously a very effective attack. That would explain it, said Kakashi, grabbing his student's attention. You would probably need to know the water walking exercise before you master it. If it's a Jounin class attack, it would need equal control, but I doubt you'll be able to learn it in a couple hours. Naruto hung his head as he took in what he had to do. The attack just seemed to be out of his reach, but he would get it sooner or later. So, what do you plan on doing during the fight? Asked Kakashi. Naruto looked at him for a second as he thought about. He was too busy training to come up with a plan of attack, but now that he thought about it, it would be smart to come up with something. But he promised himself one thing, though. I don't want to use the Sharingan, the blonde muttered with finality. The Hatake raised an eyebrow as he looked at his student. Why would that be? You copied it, therefore you should use it. Yeah, but it's Sasuke's and I don't want to fight like that prick, answered the sun-kissed boy with another scowl. So, I'm just going to assume that you're going to use Hayatan and Byakuya Chakra. I'm definitely going to use Hayatan, but I don't know about the Byakuya Chakra, mainly because I don't know how to fully use it. Naruto then turned to his teacher with hopeful eyes. You wouldn't mind teaching me to use it, would you? Kakashi smiled under his mask as he heard him. That's what he loved about teaching Naruto. He was so open to learning something new, whether it was just another lesson or a new jutsu. The Scarecrow could probably attest this to the academy when the blonde was there and how they might have stunted the boy's growth by holding him back. If this was true, it was possible Naruto could have been at Sasuke's level in latent talent alone. This further explained why he absorbed everything he was taught like a sponge. No, I don't have a problem, said Kakashi as he stood and put his hands in his pockets, but you're going to have to go through a couple quick lessons without using your limit, otherwise, you lose your chance to switch limits in battle, and we don't want that. No problem, but what are you going to teach me? Naruto was immediately on his feet with his foxy grin, waiting for the lesson. His teacher turned to him with a slight smile at the boy's eagerness. Well, for starters, I'll be honest and say that I don't use it often because it messes with my Sharingan, which might be good for you with your battle with Sasuke and Sakura, also partly because my reserves are small. But this shouldn't be a problem for you because of your naturally high reserves thanks to the QB. Alright, I can see some of that, but what are you supposed to do? Asked the blonde again. Well, continued the former ANBU captain, Byakuya Chakra is a very taijutsu-oriented limit. You constantly have to saturate the air with it, but by doing so, you allow a whole different form of hand-to-hand combat. This also gives you a larger sense of touch as people within the range of the saturated air can be sensed, whether or not you're looking at them. Let me give you a demonstration. Naruto watched as his sensei walked over to a nearby tree and took out his hands from his pockets. Immediately, the blonde could sense the chakra fill the air, centering on his teacher. Then his eyes widened as Kakashi lightly punched the tree, but kept an inch away from it. Not even a second later, the side of the tree splintered, leaving a hole about a foot wide. How the, spoke the dumbfounded blonde. Chakra displacement, Kakashi answered the half-spoken question. I gathered the chakra I placed in the air into my fist and released it, but it released so fast that I smashed the tree. Naruto became even more shocked as he saw his teacher step 10 feet away and then make a punching motion again, gathering the chakra in the air. He then heard a punch knock some of the bark of the tree. It didn't do nearly as much damage as the last attack, but it was still something worth seeing. As you can see, explained Kakashi as he put his hands back into his pockets, at the same time, his body became a black hole, sucking in all the loose white chakra in the air. Using the same attack I can send punches through the air to about 10 feet, but as you saw, the attack was about the same as if I was going to normally attack someone. The closer you are, the more damage. When will I be able to learn that? Said Naruto with a grin that threatened to split his face in half. I'm afraid that you won't be able to learn it for a while. The blonde boy's smile quickly became an annoyed look as his teacher explained it to him. Byakuya Chakra is actually difficult to control because it's so much denser than normal chakra. As a matter of fact, if you used it, your chakra capacity may even triple. I would teach you this now, but the control this requires is comparable to the Hyuga Juken. Then why show me all that cool stuff if I can't learn it now? Asked Naruto as he scratched the back of his head. I wanted to give you an example, but I also wanted you to try and use the chakra saturation that you saw. It's just a matter of you continually releasing it into the air. And, like I said before, it can mess over some jujitsu and make it to where the Sharingan can't fully copy things. Got that? His student bobbed his head up and down rapidly. It has a lot to take in, but watching the Byakuya Chakra in full action was absolutely awesome. He couldn't wait to use it against his rival. Now that I've given you your hint like your other teammates, I'm going to go and relax for the rest of the time. Good luck with the water jutsu. Naruto watched as his sensei walked out of the clearing while dragging out his little orange book. He quickly got back to his water jutsu, still troubled with sharpening the water curtain. 12 o'clock didn't come slow enough as Sasuke and Sakura slowly made their way to the clearing they agreed to meet everyone at. As they stepped into it, they found Naruto already there, sitting on rock with his legs crossed while wearing his infamous foxy grin. "You still up to this, dope?" asked Sasuke, wearing his superiority smirk. Naruto adopted a serious look that he had only seen when there was a battle to be fought, just like when they were going to fight the fake Hunter Nin. "I would eat my own sandals before I'd back down from you," yelled the blonde from across the clearing. Everyone turned as Kakashi made his appearance in the clearing with a puff of smoke. It was odd to see him without his nose in his famous book for once. But he had to be serious for this event. The infamous Sharingan was going against the Kyokugen, a bloodline limit that copied other limits. He had to be. Naruto stood up and jumped off the rock as Kakashi's voice was rang from his position across the clearing. "Alright, I want a fair, clean match. Anything goes, but there will be no killing. If I feel things are getting out of hand, I will intervene. Now, it's a 2-on-1 match with Naruto against Sasuke and Sakura. Fighters ready?" Naruto nodded and quickly shattered his eyes with a quick spike of chakra. He still didn't have a clue which limit he was going to start with, but he was still going to give hell, even if one of his enemies right now was the girl he was crushing on. Sasuke activated his jujutsu, like Naruto, while Sakura flipped out a kunai. They had a small plan ready before they came to the clearing, but it was dependent on a lot of things. "Begin," yelled their teacher. Naruto made the first move as he jumped backwards, all the while doing his favorite hand seal. Another second later, 10 clones appeared and began to charge the Uchiha and Haruno. Sasuke tracked them all with the Sharingan and began his counterattack while Sakura began swiping at them with her knife. 30 seconds later, the clones were destroyed and both quickly set their sights on their teammate, but it was long enough for him to decide what he was going to use. Naruto could feel the shards falling out of his eyes, signaling an active limit, but nobody saw due to the goggles. Even Kakashi was wondering what he had chosen to use. The blonde once again did another hand seal and formed at least 20 clones, beginning another surge of attacks. This time, the duo had gotten tired of taijutsu and both began to do hand seals. Sakura was the first one done. Fire release, ember shot. Sasuke had likewise finished his. Fire release, immortal phoenix flame. The pink-haired Kunoichi began to fire off small fireballs from the palms of her hand while Sasuke pelted off even bigger, faster flames from his mouth. The combined attack quickly burned all the clones, even as Naruto kept on making them. Finally, the blonde felt it was time to reveal his new move for all to see. Sasuke watched with a smile as he saw Naruto go through 6 hand seals, but his smirk fell off quickly as his Sharingan saw the workings of the jutsu, but wasn't allowing him to copy it. "What the hell? What's going on?" Sasuke confusedly shouted in his mind. He quickly got his answer as Naruto took a deep breath. Ice release, frostbite. The blonde blew outwards, sending an icy wind that quickly froze whatever it touched with a very thin layer of ice. It quickly doused the fires the duo started, causing them to take a step back in caution. Naruto quickly went through them again and breathed another ice wind, making the two dodge by jumping to the side. Sasuke-kun. The aforementioned boy looked to where he heard his name and saw Sakura gripping her left arm. His eyes picked up a thin layer of frost that was slowly going up the side of her arm, encasing it and making her skin go pale. She had been unlucky enough to get the tail end of the attack. "My arm, it's numb. I can't move it," she yelled towards him with wide eyes. Sasuke rounded on Naruto with his fury starting to burn at him again, but before he could even start the hand seals for another attack, his blonde teammate finished up another set. Another cold wind struck where he was standing and like everything else the icy wind caressed, everything developed a thin layer of frost. Sakura tried to distract her teammate long enough so that her partner could finish some hand seals and quickly began to pelt Naruto with kunai with only her good arm. The blonde saw it all coming and pulled his own knife, blocking all the attacks, but it wasn't enough as a few managed to get past his guard, leaving him with a couple cuts. Fire release, grand fireball technique. Naruto ran through his own hand seals as quickly as possible. Ice release, frostbite. Fire and ice clashed as the two attacks hit head-on. Extreme heat and chilling cold pushed against the other, threatening to overtake the other. While the two played tug-o-war, Sakura took her chance as she got behind the distracted Jinchuriki. She once more began to pelt him, this time with shuriken, hoping to get a lucky hit. Her efforts weren't in vain as Naruto got pinned with a couple of stars, making him lose concentration. The blonde quickly abandoned ship as he jumped out of the way before he could get roasted. On the other end of the attack, Sasuke smirked as he felt another Tomoe enter his eyes. Now things were going to get interesting. The moment the Jinchuriki landed, he did his favorite hand seal, creating even more clones while he stood back, watched, and planned. They were quickly picked off as Sasuke began to mercilessly pound the clones with fireballs while Sakura resorted to exploding tags attached to her kunai, causing a couple craters. The two jumped out of the way as another icy wind blew past them, but Sasuke found himself grinding his teeth as he felt his foot suddenly go numb. He tripped as he landed, but Sakura was already protecting him, pelting fireballs as she got her feeling back in her arm. Naruto created a clone as the pink-haired girl's attacks came at him. The clone promptly grabbed its creator and threw him into the air. Sakura looked above as Naruto did his favorite hand seal again, creating several aerial clones that dived at her. Her partner was already at her side as he finished his hand seals and sent another firestorm at the incoming human missiles. A couple of the clones got past the blasts and began to attack the ebony-haired boy in taijutsu, but his Sharingan picked apart the attacks better than ever thanks to his new Tomoe. His self-victory was quickly denounced as he felt a couple of the blonde boy's punches connect with his back, causing him to stumble a bit. He quickly rounded on them and finished them off with several quick attacks. The Uchiha turned his attention elsewhere and ran to Sakura's side as she was thrown to the ground. Grabbing a set of kunai, he quickly launched them at the clones, but they quickly dodged. He smiled, though, as he maneuvered the stars with near-invisible wires, causing them to hit a good deal of the clones and making them disappear with a puff of smoke. One of them even hit the genuine article. Taking full advantage of the opening, he quickly sent another grand fireball towards the blonde, but as the attack hit, the flames split apart as his enemy began to retaliate with another frostbitten wind. Naruto felt confused as the attack suddenly stopped, but found the reason as Sakura came up to his side and slashed at him with her knife. It managed to cut him on the hand, but nothing too deep. Unfortunately for his teammate, some of the blood launched from the wound, landing right into her eyes and making her give a pained yelp. "Sakura-chan," yelled Naruto as he watched her stumble back while trying to rub at her eyes furiously. "Stop the match for a second," yelled Kakashi as he trotted next to her. Sasuke stopped, but with an angry grunt, while Naruto looked on with worry, clutching his lightly bleeding hand. Thankfully, the wound was already closing up as the Kyuubi's chakra poured into it. Kakashi had Sakura open her eyes to see that they were bloodshot. Digging into his pouch, he pulled out a water bottle and quickly began to rinse her eyes. After he got the blood out, he felt his visible eye widen as he saw red splotches on her irises. A second later, they faded into the normally vibrant green eyes. There was something just a little off about that. He quickly turned to the other members of Team 7 that were looking on with worry. "Sakura can no longer fight for reasons out of our hands. Continue the fight when I say." Both of them nodded and watched as the only female member of Team 7 walked beside her teacher while rubbing furiously at her eyes, even as she sat down on the boulder next to Kakashi. "Alright, begin again," announced the copycat. Sasuke already launched himself at Naruto at high speeds. Even if Sakura was out, he wanted those goggles to come off, and there was no way that he was going to allow the dope to win. Seeing his enemy coming at him, Naruto formed more clones and charged at him. With the Sharingan, the Uchiha stopped his charge and began to pick off clones as they came near him. But the blondes quickly disappeared while the real one fired off another ice release, Frostbite. Sasuke wasn't about to take the attack rolling over. He flashed through his own hand seals and fired off several fireballs, attacking the wind and slowing it down before it could layer him in ice. As he finished up with his initial attack, he finished another set of seals and breathed another grand fireball that pushed back the icy and wind in full, but his target was launched into the air before he could take the hit by a clone he summoned. Just as Naruto landed a distance away, Sasuke rocketed into the air and threw more shuriken. The blonde watched with a smile as he saw all of them go around him. Ha! Your aim sucks. ACK, the blonde stopped as he got tied to a nearby tree. Sasuke tightened the wires while smirking as he went through a quick set of hand seals. His teammate knew he was in trouble, especially when he saw the fire building up on the wires. He had only one shot at this, one mishap and he was going to get fried like a toad on an open fire. The Kyokugen user shattered his eyes and removed the stormy-colored irises associated with Hyoton users and changed his eye color in favor of Byaku Chakra user. Just as the fire got halfway down the wires, the blonde made his counterattack and shoved raw, white chakra into the wires and down towards the Uchiha at the other end. Sasuke looked in disbelief as a white chakra cut past the fire and straight at him. With what felt like an electrical shock, he flew backwards as he was hit with the raw chakra, loosening the binds on the blonde. As quickly as he could before Sasuke could recover, he pulled out a shuriken and began to charge it with Byaku chakra, making the weapon glow white. Sasuke stood up, but watched as Naruto threw weapon. Normally, a simple throwing star would make a simple whistling sound as it cut through the air, but Naruto's sounded like a buzzsaw gone crazy. Out of panic, the ebony-haired boy pulled out a kunai and blocked the incoming star, only to watch as the weapon continued to push into his weapon, making him stumble backwards. When the shuriken finally stopped, the weapon smoldered from the friction while his kunai was sliced halfway through. He quickly jumped out of the way as 10 more of the stars gone demented swept past him. Naruto then got the bright idea of using a kunai instead. Unlike Kakashi, he put the chakra into the knife rather than coat it with the white chakra. Sasuke looked towards Naruto, but quickly bent his knees backwards as his Sharingan barely caught a glimpse of a weapon of some kind screaming past his face. Everyone watched as the knife shot into the side of the tree and made it explode, showering the area with splinters. Needless to say, the maelstrom liked what he saw and pulled out all of his remaining kunai. Sasuke got back up from his fall in time to jump into the air to dodge 9 whistling, white kunai with the tails of white chakra in their wake. Where the knives hit, craters formed from the sheer speed and force the kunai packed. Naruto looked up to see Sasuke going through hand seals for one last attack, a very large fire release, grand fireball technique. The blonde caught on to what this meant. It was the end of the battle and time for one last attack. He quickly began to pour as much chakra as he could into his last weapon, hoping to be able to cut the fire like he did last time and get to his target. Kakashi saw what was coming and began to worry for his students' lives. Before the final blows could be unleashed, he went through his own hand seals faster than the two combined. Both of the boys looked to the left in time for a whistling gale of wind to sweep through the area and send them flying into the trees, making them lose concentration on their attacks and allowing the chakra charging their attacks to escape. Before they could ask what happened, they heard Kakashi's voice ring through the clearing. Due to the threat of you two killing each other, I call this match a draw. Ichiwai, I was about to win, shouted Naruto in retaliation. Sasuke didn't answer, but he looked absolutely murderous. Kakashi stared at them for a long while, trying to get it through their thick skulls just how much danger they were in. I said in the rules not to kill each other, the silver-haired man told them harshly. What you both were about to do would have, at the least, caused serious injury, or even worse. For that reason, I decided it was fit for me to intervene. Sasuke ground his teeth in aggravation. Victory was so close that he could taste it. Had he been given another second, he would now be seeing what was beyond the goggles. Naruto, on the other hand, realized what he almost done and began to hang his head in shame. Had he thrown that knife, it would have cut through the fire and then it might have shot straight through Sasuke, probably killing him. He had lost control, so intent to grasp victory and show the team that he was more than a dead last. I'm sorry, Sensei, muttered Naruto as he slowly got up. It's okay, but don't let this happen again, the wiry man spoke, this time with a much softer voice. The walk home was quiet, except for when Sakura would growl in annoyance and scratch her eyes. Throughout the trip back, the Uchiha heir kept thinking to himself. He saw how the kunai began to glow white and how much chakra Naruto was pouring into it. Would he have won if his opponent threw that weapon? The white chakra he saw did cut through the fire he had sent down the wires. It hit him like a sledgehammer. Had Naruto thrown that knife, the win would have gone to the dobe. He grinded his teeth at the thought of losing to the dead last. He would have won and he, the Uchiha, the most elite of Konoha, would have been under the village idiot's feet. That wasn't mentioning the unique ice move he saw the blonde use. He couldn't copy it no matter how many times he watched Naruto go through the hand seals. That wasn't right, the Sharingan could copy almost anything as long as it wasn't a bloodline. That's when he realized it, the blonde did have a limit of some kind at his disposal. Now he felt like crap. Knowing Naruto and he shared a common characteristic like that didn't make him feel any better. Even though he didn't know it, he accepted Naruto as his rival that very moment. It was no longer a joke. The blonde could match him, as evidenced by his duel in the forest. He had to get stronger or otherwise he was going to lose this arms race. He heard a cough and turned to Sakura to see that she was starting to look sick. Her eyes were glazed over while her cheeks were beginning to take a pink hue, a sign she was experiencing a fever. Even though he wouldn't admit it to anybody, he did feel a small connection with her. She had stuck with him through those plans to get Naruto talking, but he really began to take notice of her that night when they trained. He got a small look into her soul and could see that she was more than the fangirl he knew. And even though he wouldn't admit to anyone, looking at her now, he was beginning to worry for her health. "Sakura, are you okay? You're starting to look sick," he asked nonchalantly. "Yeah, I'm fine, but my eyes are killing me and giving me a headache," Sakura answered. Even Kakashi was looking at her with worry. He couldn't place why she would be sick all of a sudden, but he could tell it wasn't good. "Sorry about getting some blood in your eyes," Naruto apologized, looking upset. Everyone was relieved as they caught sight of the house, finally glad that they were going to get some rest after the day's events. Chapter 5: Transcendent Bloodlines. Sasuke and Naruto both awoke to having water poured on them, courtesy of a basic water jutsu. The blonde of the group naturally let a string of curses run through the air as he began to wring out his clothing while Sasuke gave a quick look to his teammate to see that the maelstrom had once again slept in with his goggles on. Both boys looked towards the culprit, half expecting it to be Sakura, but to their surprise, a tired-looking Kakashi stared at them with his single eye. "Breakfast," he simply said before he walked back down to the dining room. The two quickly got dressed and ran downstairs, only to be surprised again to see their pink-haired teammate absent. "Where's Sakura?" asked Sasuke as he took his seat. The copycat sighed as he sat down his empty cup of coffee and stared at them for a minute, attempting to figure how he was going to word his answer. Tsunami, who had just entered into the room with the food, took on a worried look as she stood there waiting for him to talk. Naruto and Sasuke quickly noticed that she had bags under her eyes. "I won't lie," began the wiry man. "She's sick with something we can't identify. Last night, Tsunami and I both watched her after she began to spit up blood. Sakura has a high-grade fever and her eyes are bloodshot. There are a lot of other symptoms, but it would be those that are the more dominant ones." "Then what are we going to do?" asked Naruto with a great deal of worry in his voice. "Tazuna, when is the bridge going to be finished?" asked the masked man as he turned to the bridge builder. The old man mulled it in his head for a couple seconds. "In about a week." Kakashi nodded. "I'm sorry to say this, but we're going to have to cut this mission short. All of us will be heading back once we pack all of our things. Right now, Sakura needs medical attention as soon as possible." "What?" shouted Inari from across the other end of the table, "but..." "I'm sorry," said the scarecrow with a hint of finality, "but we have to leave. Naruto, Sasuke, start packing once you get done with breakfast." Both of them nodded as they began to wolf down their food so they could get ready to go. Inari sat at the end of the table while looking downtrodden. His surrogate big brother was leaving much earlier than he thought he would. 2 hours later, Kakashi was seen piggybacking Sakura while Sasuke and Naruto were standing next to him with their backpacks in tow. He thought it was his imagination, but the scarecrow would have sworn the Uchiha was giving his sick teammate worried glances every several seconds. "I guess this is goodbye," began Tazuna with sadness in his aged eyes. "You guys helped so much. I honestly don't know how to repay you, but for starters, I managed to get someone at the docks that'll give you a ride home." "Much obliged," thanked Kakashi. Naruto turned to a crying Inari, trying to figure out how to get the boy to relax. The young kid had become something akin to a little brother during his time there. "Sorry for crying," said Inari in between sniffs. "It's okay to cry, you know." Naruto could feel himself on the verge of tears, but that was the last thing he wanted. Speaking, he only cry liquid silver nowadays. "But you're going to make me cry." Sasuke, on the other hand, kept looking at Sakura with worry evident on his normally stoic face. His friend, if he could call her that, was breathing erratically, and her body was racked with shivers in between each breath. Like his sensei said, her cheeks were tinged with a deep crimson, the telltale sign of a very nasty fever. They had to leave now. "Can we please get going?" Sasuke suggested with an edge, hoping to hurry the show. With the final goodbyes from Tsunami, Tazuna, and Inari, Team 7 began their long trek home. "I know what we should name the bridge," shouted Inari as he saw their retreating backs, getting his family's attention. "We should call it the Great Naruto Bridge." The aged bridge builder mulled the name in his mind. He did want it to be named after him, but the blonde ninja did bring back hope to his village. Tazuna guessed that it was fitting that it should be named after Naruto. "Alright, why not? Today, the bridge shall be known as the Great Naruto Bridge." "Once we get back onto land," explained Kakashi to his conscious students, "we'll move at full speed so that we can back to Konoha before nightfall. Right now, we can't afford to waste time, otherwise, we might lose Sakura." Both of them nodded as they took in just how dire the situation was. The two boys turned to look ahead of them, watching as their boat skimmed across the water at full speed. Their hair whipped about from the erratic winds caused by the speed they traveled across the water, and sometimes it'd splash and shower them in a cool spray. It was so much nicer than they remembered when they first entered the wave country. Thankfully, because Gato was gone, they could now use a boat engine without much fear. Sakura lay in the center of the boat with her head propped against her backpack that Kakashi had been carrying with him. Surprisingly, Sasuke sat by her side the entire trip. Naruto would have commented on his teammates' unusual behavior around Sakura, but he didn't feel that now was the right time to aggravate anybody, lest he lose any body parts he wished to keep. Team 7 caught sight of the dock leading back to Solid Land. The moment the boat touched it, Kakashi quickly picked up Sakura and her supplies, and then the ninja rocketed out of the boat towards home. The man whom had been working the motor whistled as he saw the speeds they moved at. The run back to Konoha was silent, mainly because Naruto and Sasuke were hard-pressed to keep up with their masked teacher, even when the man was carrying someone. They basically had no time to argue. It was almost nightfall and everyone was eager to see the gates of Konoha and to get Sakura to the hospital. Naruto couldn't wait to get his hands on his favorite meal and to see Irika, but Sasuke had other plans. He needed to train, he wanted to keep ahead of Naruto in their personal arms race, and to not have a repeat of their first battle. If they all weren't going full speed, everyone would have sighed in relief as the famous wooden gates of the village hidden in the leaves came into view. To say that gate duty was boring would be like saying that Jiraiya was just an average pervert. It was a huge understatement. Nobody liked the job. As a matter of fact, most shinobi went out of their way to avoid it. To the guards at the front of the gates, the team of Konohanin heading their way was a godsend. Their boredom would end for a couple minutes at least. "Open up," ordered Kakashi as he and his team stopped in front of the gates. "Right now we don't have time to spare. One of my team is direly sick and needs medical attention ASAP." One of them nodded and quickly opened the gates, greeting everyone to the sight of their home. They were never so happy to have their eyes looking out on the village. Before Sasuke and Naruto could be left to their own devices, their teacher cut their escape short. "Now, before you go off, I want you two to meet me by the usual spot tomorrow. And Naruto, you and I are going to have a private talk with Sandaime later as well." The two members of Team 7 nodded their heads in confirmation. Sasuke, though, couldn't help but wonder why his sensei and blonde teammate needed to meet with the Hokage. Maybe because it had something to do with Naruto's limit. That would make sense. After all, it wasn't every day a bloodline limit manifested at random. It still aggravated him that he didn't have a clue what it was, but kept his annoyances behind his usual mask of indifference. Okay, see you later, sensei. Make sure you tell us what's wrong with Sakura tomorrow, shouted Naruto as he ran for his favorite ramen stand. With that, the remaining two members of Team 7, Kakashi and Sasuke, split their paths and went to do their own business. Kakashi to drop off Sakura at the hospital and to talk to Sarutobi, and for Sasuke to train. The blonde knew the path to Ichiraku's like the back of his hand. He even knew how to get there through the nearby sewer system, having had to use the sewer lines once when some chunin tailed him for a prank he pulled when he was younger. Good times. Sadly, he hadn't been home to pull any pranks lately, but he was back and going to. He stopped mid-thought and mid-step as his Kyokugen's sixth sense kicked in, a sign that someone nearby owned bloodline limit. Naruto swiveled his head as he searched for the person, taking a keen look at every person's face that passed by. He calmed down, knowing his sense worked better if concentrated, and as if by magic he sensed that the person was in the general direction of his favorite ramen stand. What luck! It was dinner and a new bloodline limit in one run. Without a second thought, he ran towards the person, shoving people as he went and earning some choice words. But it didn't matter to him that he was being rude to people. There was a new limit he needed to copy, or at least to ask the person for permission to. All he needed to do was find out who owned the limit and what it did. As he got to Ichiraku's, he finally caught sight of the source of the signature. Had it not been for his goggles, his eyes would have launched out of their sockets. The person was sitting at the counter and eating a bowl of ramen. Naruto could recognize that pineapple hairstyle from a mile away. It was none other than Umino Iraka sitting down and enjoying his favorite meal. The said man perked up and then turned around to meet his shocked student. Hey Naruto! Welcome back! Iraka's welcoming smile morphed into a confused look as he saw Naruto's gawking face. The water goggles were also a new addition to his surrogate brother's attire. Something Iraka didn't expect to ever happen come to pass. Naruto's eyes rolled into the back of his head and he then fell backwards. Sarutobi sat behind his desk wide-eyed while staring at the masked Hatake with as much shock as someone telling him that Makeout Paradise had been cancelled. His pipe was smoking as it balanced from his mouth, the smell of burned tobacco drifting faintly through the room. Sarutobi had to pull out his pipe halfway through Kakashi's story of the Kyokugen to calm his nerves. Naruto truly was the most unpredictable ninja in the world, having pulled something out of the left field and gained such a powerful bloodline limit. This allowed an unlimited amount of possibilities for the blonde through the copying of limits. Shinobi nations would go as far as war to claim such a prize. Kakashi, do you know what this means? The aged man asked. I have a partial idea, answered the scarecrow. Yes, I imagine you do, continued the Sandame. This puts Naruto on a pedestal much higher than even Sasuke, so much so that we can't even tell the council about this. The Kyokugen is just too valuable to let anyone know about it unless it's absolutely necessary. I know, agreed Kakashi. Naruto's bloodline limit is so valuable that any nation would go to war just to claim it. I can see why you wouldn't want to tell the council, though. The moment any of them finds out, they might try to marry off Naruto. Inoichi would probably be the first to make a run for it too. I would agree, the elders said, but the elders wouldn't be the only ones to pull such a stunt. Some of the friendlier nations might make an attempt at gaining the Kyokugen by such means. Either way, I'm glad you've kept it secret, and I'm proud of Naruto for actually using his brain by wearing those goggles. The copycat chuckled. Yes, he's much smarter than even I originally assumed. He did use some good strategy during his fight against Sakura and Sasuke. As a matter of fact, he would have won had I not interfered, but I felt my students' lives were more important. Sarutobi reclined in his seat once more as he let his mind wander, thinking of what the Kyokugen might entail. There was so much more to the Kyokugen, but how did it come into being? It had to be related to Rinnegan in some way, but if that was the case... Kakashi, the said man turned his attention to the aged man as the Sandame spoke in a tone that meant business. The Kyokugen isn't a jujitsu. What? How's that possible? Asked the wiry man, his single eye widening a fraction from surprise. The Hokage rocked back and forth in his seat for a couple seconds to gather his thoughts. The Kyokugen isn't just a jujitsu, despite how it shows in Naruto's eyes. The jujitsu is just a small part of the limit as a whole. What we are dealing with here is a transcendent bloodline limit, much like the legendary six-way eyes, the Rin Negan. What do you mean? Kakashi heard of the Rin Negan, but only in passing. Supposedly, the founder of the ninja world used the Rin Negan, but other than that, Kakashi was lacking in knowledge of the capabilities of said limit. From the details I've gathered about the Rin Negan, explained the Sandaime, it wasn't limited to the eyes. The users also had access to all 6 forms of chakra, along with a whole arsenal of other abilities. Thus, it was something more than just a dijitsu. Most limits are usually classified as anatomy manipulation, by element, or as jujitsu, but the Rin Negan and Kyokugen are all 3, making them transcendent bloodline limits. If this is true, questioned the masked Jounin, then how does this make the Kyokugen one these limits? Simple. Naruto's chakra is neutral, but changes into whatever form it needs, said Sarutobi while ticking off his fingers. Then there is the body manipulation that occurs whenever he changes limits. That's another. Finally, there is the Dijitsu, which is the mark of the Kyokugen as a whole and the necessary key used to copy the limits themselves. For a second, Kakashi stood stock still as he took in everything, but then reclined backwards into his chair while shaking his head with his visible eye closed. This was becoming way too complicated for his tastes. He could thank Naruto for making his life a pain in the ass. The brat just had to develop a stupid, but valuable, limit. Where was the simplicity in life? Nonetheless, Kakashi was able to glean from the Sandaime just how important Naruto's limit was. If the Kyokugen was as great as the Hokage was making it out to be, there was no doubt it was something worth fighting for. Amazing, the person that everyone hates the most happens to have the one thing that everyone would want the most, the silver-haired man mused to himself. It's more ironic than anything. It is, isn't it, said the aged man with a smile that quickly became a face of business. But now we have to protect Naruto from everyone that would try to steal his limit. Until we can discuss this some more with Naruto, you're dismissed, but do not so much as breath a word of this to anyone. Kakashi nodded and left to see his pink-haired student, leaving the Sandaime in his thoughts. He needed information on Minato and Kushina. Maybe he could find something about their bloodlines and whether or not they had any genetic quirks. There was a problem, though. The files were destroyed to keep Naruto safe, putting the late Yondaime and his wife's name forever in secrecy, except unto people that knew them. Sarutobi needed to find one of those friends, and he doubted Hayashi would have a clue about Naruto being his godson. What he needed was someone who knew them well, someone that had been close to them and wouldn't breathe a single secret they had, someone like Jiraiya. Besides, the white-haired pervert had yet to meet his grandson in the first place anyways. Pressing his finger against the intercom on his desk, Sarutobi gave his orders to his secretary. You have 3 minutes to get me the best Hunter Nin team out there. Yes, sir, she yelled back frantically. At the hospital, a female nurse was exchanging disbelieving glances from a sheet paper to the Pinkette sleeping silently. Is she all right? Said a voice from behind her. She spun and almost accidentally hit the newcomer with her hand. The nurse looked to see that it was a Jounin that wore a mask and with a single eye visible for all to see. It didn't take long for her to identify him as the legendary Kakashi copycat Hatake. Well, he asked expectantly. He was nervous from the way he saw the woman giving disbelieving glances towards his student. Kakashi just hoped it wasn't anything lethal. The nurse shook her head to clear her mind, and then answering with a careful tone, well, we stabilized her, and she's going to be fine. Her symptoms were on par with an extreme allergic reaction, but... The dark-haired nurse pursed her lips as she pondered how she was going to describe this medical oddity. What she was seeing on this girl's blood samples was just so strange. She read about many medical peculiarities, but nothing was on par to what the blood samples told her. But, pushed Kakashi with impatience. She tried her best to gather the words. What makes this so unusual is what caused the reaction. We took some blood samples earlier, but, well. Just look. She handed the paper she was holding to silver-haired Jounin so he could glance at himself, but to him, it was nothing but random rows of letters and numbers. In the back of his mind, he felt kind of stupid because he couldn't read what he was saying. His confusion was quickly fixed as the nurse explained. The top row of numbers and letters, she began to explain, is her original DNA sequence. Her original DNA sample marked her as a normal person, no bells, no whistles. But that second sequence below the first one, it marks her as having a bloodline limit. Kakashi's single eye almost popped out of its socket. For a minute that seemed like an eternity, he digested what the bombshell shoved into his eardrums. How the hell did Sakura get her own limit when her family has no recorded history of being shinobi? But this is what's weird, continued the lady while putting a hand to her chin. That third sequence, it's foreign DNA we managed to isolate. That's what caused her allergic reactions, and I might not be jumping the fence by saying that may have given her the bloodline limit. This is unheard of in medical history. People's DNA just doesn't change out of the blue. The scarecrow stared at the paper in disbelief. This had to be bad joke, or at least a really weird dream he was having trouble waking up from. If what the nurse said was true, Sakura would have needed to come into contact with someone's blood. The thing was that she didn't. He paused. It had only been since yesterday since her battle with Naruto. Kakashi remembered specifically watching as she cut Naruto on the hand, and then getting splashed in the eyes with stray drops of blood. What kind of limit are we talking here? He asked with a tone that made the nurse take a step back in slight fear. She cleared her throat to distract herself for a second before she got back to the situation at hand. I went over her and found nothing different with her eyes or anatomy, but her chakra, it's different. Her body is naturally producing two types of elemental chakra, which means we might have an elementally based bloodline limit on our hands. Kakashi stared at the sleeping form of Sakura for a couple seconds, trying to decide what to do. This had to be because of Naruto's blood, but how was it possible? If it was because of his blonde student's blood, he had to see Hokage-sama, and as soon as possible. Listen, and listen carefully, he ordered dangerously. I'm going to go and grab Hokage-sama. You will not leave this room until I come back, and if someone comes in you will not say anything about this. Got it? She nodded her head frantically, feeling some of the killer intent in the air. Hatake Kakashi meant business, and until he could figure out what was going on, he was going to classify this as something that was going to be kept secret. He left in a blur, making his way to the Hokage and leaving the nurse to take a seat and wait. She could tell one thing, she was as confused as hell. Now make sure that when you find him, you tell him that we're opening a new bathhouse and we're going to name it after him in his honor and that he should be here for the grand opening, suggested the Hokage. If you don't tell him this, you'd have to knock him unconscious to bring him back, and that isn't something that'll work. The males of the squad of Hunter Nin just snickered while the lone female of the group was far from pleased and 3 seconds away from trying to castrate every man within a block's radius. Sarutobi would have given them another excuse, especially when he felt the female's killer intent leaking into the air, but unless there was a nude woman and a good deal of sake involved, Jiraiya wasn't going to come quietly. It was about when he was ready to dismiss the group that Kakashi slammed the doors leading into the room wide open and looking as if he had ran at full speed without stopping. You are dismissed and do not come back unless you have him, he said to the group of masked ninja. As soon as they left, Kakashi made his worries known. Hokage-sama, you need to come with me. Is something wrong? It may have something to do with the Kyokugen, and if it does, then we are seriously going to have our hands full. At the word Kyokugen, Sarutobi quickly stood up and followed the masked nin back to the hospital. At the hospital, the nurse was starting to get bored, but quickly jumped up the moment the door opened to reveal the Sandaime himself. Would you mind telling me your name? He asked. It's Hikari, sir, she answered meekly. Could you please hand me that blood sample sheet you showed Kakashi when he came here? The said man walked in from behind while closing the door. She nodded her head and quickly handed him the paper. Sarutobi's aged eyes scanned the paper before he looked up at her. What you've seen today will be considered an S-class secret from everyone, he said in a voice that meant business. Treat Sakura here as if she was a normal patient and destroy all of her blood samples and any evidence that she has a bloodline limit for the moment. This is pretty serious, isn't it? She asked in worry. You think, answered the aged man sarcastically. I'll get to it. Hikari squeaked while running out of the room as if the Shinigami itself was chasing after her. As for you, Kakashi, said Saratobi as he turned his attention to the masked man, it seems that our original chat is going to have to continue back at my office. It was starting to get past 10 o'clock and Sasuke could be seen walking home from his team's favorite training area. For one of the few times in his life, he felt as if there was someone that was egging him to get stronger. This certain someone also became his rival, and if he got lazy then his blonde teammate would push ahead of him on the power scale. That would be unacceptable. He wasn't going to allow the dead last to get ahead of him. Not in a million years. Along the way, his mind began to travel to other things. If you told him 2 days ago he would be worrying about Sakura, he would have punched the person's face in and told them to stop talking like a crazy person. But now, here he was, worrying about her. He saw a different side to Sakura when he trained her the night before their battle with Naruto. She was more. Well, he couldn't describe it. Maybe if she was a little stronger and less of a fangirl, he would have noticed her sooner. All she needed was a helping hand in the right direction. His attention was snatched from his thoughts as he caught sight of a flower shop, the one belonging to the Yanamaka family. Maybe he could be nice and get her some flowers for her stay in the hospital. Shrugging his shoulders, he walked into the shop, not remembering that a certain blonde was a resident of the place. The moment he walked in, he regretted it as he saw the said platinum blonde washing the counters. She looked up and almost squealed in excitement the moment she caught sight of the ebony-haired boy. "What could I do for you, Sasuke-kun?" she said with hearts in her eyes. Said boy took a step back before he cleared his throat. "I need flowers for someone." "Oh, really? Would they be for me?" Sasuke took another step back. No. "I need them delivered to the hospital," he simply told her. She looked a little downtrodden, but kept going on her job. Besides, if her father found out that she scared a customer away, he'd fly off the handle and she'd be at the receiving end of the stick. "All right, what would you like?" she said in a conceited tone. Sasuke sighed in relief knowing he wouldn't have the girl coming attached to him in any way, shape, and form in the next couple minutes. Maybe it was a good idea to get to know Sakura a bit more, then maybe the fangirls would stop chasing him. "What kind of flower arrangement could I get with this?" With that, he showed her some of the money he had on his person at the current moment, earning a raised eyebrow from the girl. "That would get you a pretty good size one." "Who might this be for?" she asked with genuine curiosity tinting her voice. "Just deliver it to this person." He took a nearby card and jotted down the name of the person for her to deliver to and quickly exited the building. When the Uchiha had disappeared, she quickly picked up the card and almost dropped it in shock to see that it was Sakura. Naruto slowly blinked his eyes open and sat up to see that he wasn't at his own home. Looking carefully, he could see that he was at Irika's house and he was on the couch in the living room. "About time you got up," said Irika as he walked in. "More or less, I'm curious to know what caused you to black out on me." Naruto raised a shaking hand and pointed his finger at him while staring in disbelief. Finally, he shouted what was aggravating him: "You have a bloodline limit." Irika just blinked at his student for a couple seconds, looking at Naruto as if he grew two heads. "What makes you think that?" he asked. "Don't lie to me." "I can sense it," yelled the blonde while continuing to point an accusing finger at his former teacher. Irika just sighed. "Naruto, I don't have a bloodline limit." "I'm willing to bet 10 bowls of ramen you do." The teacher just smiled and shook his head. "Okay, how about you try to prove it?" He shouldn't have said that as it egged Naruto to do just that. The blonde quickly got up and was about to take off the goggles, at least until he remembered he was trying his absolute best to keep his eyes as secret as possible. Among the people of Konoha, though, Naruto felt as if he could trust his teacher. You wouldn't mind keeping a secret, would you?" he asked, rubbing the back of his head sheepishly. "Of course," his teacher answered. With a foxy smile on his face, he took off the goggles, showing Irika his mirror-like pupils. The man felt his eyes widen and couldn't help but stare at the eyes with shock. His favorite student had a jujutsu and one that he had never seen nor heard of. Naruto, is that a bloodline limit? Irika asked, completely dumbfounded. The blonde bane of Konoha bobbed his head up and down. His foxy grin only widened. If there was someone Naruto could trust, it was Irika, and he was pretty sure the teacher wouldn't say anything. Yep. I call it Kyokugen, he said with excitement. Do you know what it does? Naruto scratched the back of his head. Well, I can copy other limits by just looking at the person that has one. Oh, and I can sense people that have limits, like you. He said the last part while pointing at his teacher once more. Irika just blinked again, before he let an amused smile cross his face. It was then his turn to rub the back of his head. I didn't think anybody would find out, he said with a slight mixture of amusement and embarrassment. Ha! I knew it. Naruto grinned in victory. Wait a minute, Irika's smile was replaced by one of worry. Naruto, did you say that you can copy other bloodline limits? Yep. I already copied the Sharingan, Hayatan, and Byakuya chakra. The teacher stared at his former student with disbelief. He never heard of such a bloodline limit, but he did have to agree with Kakashi on one thing: Naruto truly was the most unpredictable person on the face of the planet. So, why did you tell me you didn't have a limit? Irika was cut from his musings to see that Naruto was wearing a very curious look. He sighed as he got ready to explain. Well, there are a lot of things you don't know about me that I've tried to keep secret. For starters, I do indeed have a bloodline limit, and second, I may be a chunin in rank, but my abilities put me at a low S-class level. Naruto's mouth dropped like a rock to the floor as soon as he heard his former teacher was a Kage-level ninja. But if that was true, then he could have kicked Mizuki's ass that night. You can't really be that strong. You could have beaten the living daylights out of Mizuki. So, why didn't you? He asked with a grimace, but was caught off guard as his teacher lightly chuckled. Well, I trusted you, his teacher explained. I knew you wouldn't let Mizuki win that night, especially when you told me that you learned a move from the Forbidden Scroll. So, I acted like a normal chunin that night just because I wanted to find out what it was. Naruto stared at him for once in his life at a loss for words to yell at him for. His teacher thought a lot like Kakashi when in the middle of battle. To top that off, Irika trusted him so much that he acted weaker than normal and put his life into his student's hands. He knew he could beat Mizuki that night. Naruto started, still at a loss for words. Irika trusted him that much? It's okay, not many people know this outside of Hokage-sama. Here's a question: if you're so good, then why do you teach? The blonde asked, scratching the side of his head in confusion. Irika only smiled again. I just love to teach. Don't get me wrong, I've done a couple high-level missions, but I like working at the academy. It's much more peaceful, although you and Konohamaru kind of ruin that peace and quiet. Now, do you wish you paid more attention in class? Yeah, I guess so, said Naruto, grimacing again. Now, why do you call it Kyokugen? His former teacher asked him. With a smile much calmer than his others, Naruto felt the initiative to talk about his adventures in the country of Wave. Taking a seat, he explained the whole story, including the various encounters with Zabuza, much to Irika's chagrin. The blonde got emotional towards the parts involving Haku since he still felt that connection towards the boy, and he also told how the Hayatan user was the inspiration for the name of his jujutsu. That's quite a story, Naruto, said Irika with a smile, privately thanking Haku for his small role in his favorite student's life. If it wasn't for you showing me your eyes, I would be hard-pressed to believe everything. Yeah, well, I've been trying to keep it a secret, pouted Naruto. He wanted so much to show it off to everyone in the village, but he could see why Kakashi would want to keep it a secret. Hey, do you think I could please copy your limit? Irika looked at the grinning sun-kissed boy and shook his head, making the smirk become an angry pout. To fit the picture, Naruto crossed his arms with his eye twitching in annoyance. If there were any girls nearby, they might have thought it was kind of cute, almost like a pissed-off teddy bear. Sorry, Naruto, but I doubt that the people nearby would feel grateful about experiencing a blackout, explained his teacher, causing Naruto to give his attention back to the older person. Much like Haku, my parents were survivors of the blood cleansings that went on in Kiri. It was out of luck that my parents were visiting some old friends when it began. At the time, I was very young, maybe around 2 or 3. So, because of that, I ended up living here in Konoha. You were just like Haku? Naruto asked with genuine curiosity. Iraka nodded his head before he continued. I was. What does your limit do? Well, began the scarred teacher, it's known as Hyakurai, 1000 thunderclaps. My bloodline limit allows me to control my bioelectricity and make it strong enough that I could get struck by lightning without any harmful side effects. This makes me a master of lightning jutsu to a degree that I could do some of the most powerful moves with a single hand seal. Also, I think much faster and have faster reflexes. Have you ever wondered why I caught all those erasers and buckets full of water? That does explain it. Thought Naruto while putting a finger to his chin. True to what Iraka said, pranks involving attempts to hit the man with something like erasers always ended in failure. Not to mention those couple of times that Naruto lost his temper and tried to throw blunted kunai to his teacher's head, only for the man to catch them with his fingertips without taking his face away from the blackboard. Also, I can sense bioelectricity, allowing me to track people down because of how each signature is unique from person to person, he continued to explain with a smile. That's why you always found me when I pulled a prank, yelled Naruto while pointing his finger at his teacher accusingly, only to have the man laugh. Yeah, well, there were a couple of times that I let you escape, mainly because I didn't want to follow you into the sewers. If someone had an egg on them, they would have been able to cook it on top of Naruto's simmering head. His teacher could have tracked him every time, but only let him get away those few lucky times just because he got desperate enough to crawl in the sewers. The outrage of it all. Now, as fancy as those abilities are, they're not the main ones. This immediately brought the blonde out of his simmering attitude as he watched Iraka with his eyes glued to the man. Allow me to demonstrate the most powerful ability of Hyakurai. Iraka walked over to a nearby outlet and put his finger close to it, causing all of the lights inside the house to flicker on and off. When he walked back to Naruto, he did another demonstration by putting his fingers close together, causing a small arc of electricity to dance in between them. As you can see, I control real lightning, not that fake chakra lightning you see many ninja use. What's the difference? Asked Naruto, still wide-eyed from the demonstrations. There are a lot of them, but unfortunately, it's getting too late for me to explain, and you need to head to bed. The blonde tried to protest, but Iraka cut him off before he could. Come on, you still need to train anyways. Tomorrow when we are away from civilization, I'll let you copy it, mainly because we don't need the electrical grid to crash on us. It's happened to me before, and it was quite embarrassing when they finally traced it back to me. Fine, said the blonde, crossing his arms and leaving for his apartment. Iraka just shook his head as he closed the door. Sarutobi sat there behind his desk stroking his beard in deep thought. Kakashi sat across from him, remaining quiet and waiting for what his commander had to say. For starters, the aged man finally began. It seems we have another limit on our hands. But it's how Sakura got this bloodline limit that worries me. It must have had something to do with the Kyokugen, said Kakashi, stating his theory. You saw the blood test results, and if you remember correctly from my debriefing about our mission, Sakura managed to come into contact with Naruto's blood. Sarutobi sat there quietly for a second, trying to think of how this was possible. He did have a thought, though, of why, and if so, then Naruto was in a lot more trouble than he was now, and that was saying something about his already valuable Kyokugen. I think we have found the counterpart to the Rinnegan. Kakashi cocked his head as he listened. What we are looking at here is one of the 3 great Jujutsu, the one that created bloodline limits. Just as the Rinnegan brought about ninjutsu, we're looking at the very source of every bloodline limit in existence. But that means we have to keep people away from Naruto's blood, thought the copycat out loud. Otherwise, a good deal of limits would appear out of nowhere. That's a tension we don't need. We should also be thankful that Sakura didn't come into contact with something else, Sarutobi spoke with worry. What would that be? If it was dangerous enough for her to have medical attention after just coming into contact with Naruto's blood, explained the aged man, imagine what would have happened if she came into contact with it while he was using the Kyuubi's chakra. Kakashi leaned back in his chair as he thought about it. The fox's chakra was dangerous, but if it came into contact with somebody through this blood transfer thing, the person could easily die in a matter of minutes in a very agonizing death. In a way, it was a safeguard for Naruto's blood should anyone somehow come into contact with it. It seemed the fox didn't like to share this limit with anyone else. So, what do we do? The masked man asked. Sarutobi once again began to stroke his beard. For the moment, we keep our mouths shut. Amenity is important right now, and as long as nobody finds out, we should be fine. You will make sure this limit stays secret. The Hatake nodded as he understood what the orders were. Right now, everything just needed to be kept quiet. Now, I do believe that it is near midnight, and you have yet to rest from your mission. Tomorrow, bring Naruto into my office so that we can talk to him, but we're going to keep this little bit of information about the Kyuubi secret. Kakashi nodded and quietly left to his home to get some rest before he had to meet up with his team. Chapter 6: A Cursed Miracle. Yesterday, Mizuki busted out of prison in record time and was now leaping across the rooftops to get to his house for his weapons. He expected it to take at least several more months to get out, but it seemed Lady Luck had been on his side. The guards had been busy with other things while he snuck a couple tools. There was nothing as beautiful as a plan coming together. Things were looking up, but he had one business matter to attend to before he ran to his master, Orochimaru, his revenge. He owed that little demon and Irika a lot for throwing him into prison. Tomorrow, he was going to be sure to send both of them to hell. The Chunin quickly stepped up his stealth skills as he got closer to the Hokage Tower. It was sad he had to get past the place in order to hit his home. At the time, it was the only place he could afford to buy. He was now crawling under a particular window that was open to the Hokage's personal office, a place of suicide for any normal sneaks. Mizuki was just about to get away, but stopped to listen in on a conversation when he heard the infamous Hatake Kakashi and the Sandame having a conversation. I think we have found the counterpart of the Rin Negan, Mizuki overheard them talking. He never heard of this Rin Negan before. It sounded like they were talking about a bloodline limit of some kind. Deciding he was curious enough to stay and listen to what was being talked about, he sunk deeper into the shadows. What we are looking at here is one of the three great Jujutsu, the one that created bloodline limits. Just as the Rin Negan brought about ninjutsu, we're looking at the very source of every bloodline limit in existence. The moment Mizuki heard that, his eyes widened in shock. Naruto had gained a bloodline limit of some kind, one that could grant people brand new limits? If that was true, then he could get his own. Forget that formula that Orochimaru had given him. He could get a limit, and all he had to do was come into contact with the blonde Gaki's blood. He smirked as he listened in some more, but that means we have to keep people away from Naruto's blood. Otherwise, a good deal of limits would be appearing out of nowhere. It was too good to be true. He could get his revenge and get a new limit of his own in one shot. Two birds with one stone. With an insane smile, he leapt off the building to go and plan. His day had only gotten better with this little tidbit of info. Unfortunately for him, things really were too good to be true. If he had stayed a little longer, he would have heard a very important piece of information. We should be thankful that Sakura didn't come into contact with anything else. Mitarashi Anko had just walked out of the front door of the Hokage Tower to head home for a nice dinner of her favorite food, dango. It was a nice day making men scream like little girls with some summoned poisonous snakes back at the office she shared with Ibiki. Her smile was wiped off her face as she sensed someone nearby. Looking up towards an open window that led to the Hokage's office with a keen eye, she could make out the shadow of a figure next to the window. Because it was dark, she couldn't make out anything unique about the perpetrator quite yet, but she could tell when there was someone spying. Before she could react and get some ANBU to handle the idiot, she saw the shadow leap away into the moonlight, revealing the smiling face of Mizuki. It was only for a split second though, as he landed in the shadows of the nearby buildings and silently moved away. The snake user scowled in annoyance. Mizuki had the misfortune to get stuck with her for interrogation. It wasn't a well-known fact that she really liked Irika, and unfortunately for the silver-haired Chunin that tried to kill said teacher, she took out her frustrations on the traitor with more than the usual glee. Deciding to do her village a favor, she followed the piece of scum and began to keep tabs on him for the night. Current time. If anybody saw Ino now, they would think it strange that she wasn't being her usual bossy self, shouting orders or yelling at something. As a matter of fact, she looked downright depressed. That was her mood as she walked down the white halls of the hospital, carrying a large bouquet of flowers for her rival. Sasuke had come to her last night requesting she drop off some flowers at the Konoha hospital. Of course, she was shocked when she discovered they were going to Forehead Girl. Did that mean the pink-haired girl won out? That question alone put her deeper into depression. She finally got to the doorway leading into her former best friend's room, but Ino's hand hesitated as she went to open the door. With a sigh, she grasped the knob and walked into the room. Sakura lay on her bed sleeping peacefully with the occasional beep of a machine she was hooked up to. The platinum blonde couldn't help but wonder what had put the girl here into the first place. Altogether, she looked unharmed. Out of her curiosity, she used her free hand to grab the file at the end of the bed. Ino furrowed her eyebrows, finding the file bereft of any information on Sakura. That was strange, doctors always kept important info on their patients. She shrugged as she put it back. Ino set the flowers on a nearby table and stared at Sakura for a number of seconds, each passing by like a turtle on morphine. Everything had gone Sakura's way, and it was all because she got lucky and landed a spot on Sasuke's team. Everything just seemed so unfair. Sakura had won. What more was there to it? I guess you win, Forehead, she quietly told the unconscious girl. Where was she going to go from here? Sasuke was her driving point to get stronger, just so she could impress him, but where did that take her? She knew she needed to get stronger, but for what reason? She sighed before she closed the door, making sure it didn't make any noise on her way out. Ino needed to think. A half hour later, Sakura's bright green eyes slowly blinked open. She was confused to find her surroundings to be completely different from what she fell asleep to. After blinking her eyes clean, she was startled to find herself in a clean room found only in hospitals. The kunoichi lied there, recalling how she ended up in this mess. The last thing she remembered was getting sick at the Land of Waves. Oh, now she remembered, she had been coughing up blood that night along with other pleasant symptoms. She wondered whether she was in Konoha or Wave, having been in a state of coma during the trip back. She turned her head to look around her room, only for her eyes to widen in surprise as her sight came across a large bouquet of flowers. Sakura looked over the gift trying to find out who gave it to her. To her confusion, the flowers were an anonymous gift. Ah, nice to see you awake. Sakura looked towards the doorway to see the ever-so-lazy Kakashi staring at her. You had us worried there. Had I waited another half hour to get you back to Konoha, you would have died. She wanted to ask about the details of the trip back, but then felt how dry and scratchy her throat was. That wasn't mentioning the metallic taste in the back of her mouth, probably from the blood she coughed up. The scarecrow noted his student's desire to talk and walked over to get her a cup of water. After she had sipped down some water, she let the questions fly. When did we get back? The silver-haired Jounin shrugged his shoulders. I wasn't keeping track. It was probably about 5 in the evening, or around that time, when we got back. Do they know what's wrong with me? She asked in a soft whisper. Her throat still felt sore. That's where the copycat hit a dilemma. The Sandame made it very clear that everything was to remain quiet. Besides, how would his student react to suddenly getting a first-generation bloodline limit? Well, the doctors said it was some sort of allergic reaction to something, he lied, remembering how the nurse had described the symptoms. They didn't know what caused it, even after thoroughly testing you, but they eventually stabilized you. I do have a test of my own I would like to conduct, though. Sakura looked on with confusion as her teacher pulled out a blank, white card. He handed it to her before he explained. Just channel some of your chakra into the card, he explained, answering her unasked question. The pink-haired girl did as she was told and watched the card crumble to the floor below. What happened next caused Kakashi to raise an eyebrow and for Sakura to start panicking. The dust caught on fire. Without any hint of pandemonium, he walked over to the sink with a cup and came back to pour water on the tiny flames. Before she could say she was sorry, Kakashi cleared his throat. Well, that was interesting. I got what I needed, so now I will be heading to the teen's usual spot. I think I'm late enough to earn a couple choice words from Naruto. She laughed lightly as he walked out of the room. Despite her light mood, Sakura couldn't help but wonder what the test had to do with. Naruto and Sasuke were waiting on the bridge the teen usually met on. Kakashi was being his normally tardy self and Sakura was absent. She had an excuse for her absence, though. Sasuke would occasionally sneak a glance at Naruto, who was staring off into space. He was still sore about not getting the goggles off the blonde's face, and even now he stared holes into his teammates' eyes, trying to figure out what was different with them. If the Maelstrom did have a Dojutsu, then why didn't he show it off like they expected him to? There was another thing that caught Sasuke by surprise. Naruto wasn't complaining about their sensei being late as per usual. The blonde was just sitting there and thinking, something that shouldn't be humanly possible either. Ever since the wave mission, he was acting weird for no apparent reason. It was while he was pondering about his teammates' unusual behavior that Kakashi had shown up in a poof of smoke. Sorry about being late. You see, there was this old lady. He thought he could try something new today rather than his usual black cat one. Right, Naruto drawled, wearing a foxy smile. Sasuke just gave him a death glare, wishing that the man would spontaneously catch on fire for his tardiness. Kakashi just smiled beneath his mask. It was obvious Naruto remembered their talk back at the Land of Waves, otherwise, he would have gotten yelled at like normal. He would admit that it was nice to have someone understand why you act the way you do. It was refreshing. I came by to tell you guys that I'm giving you the day off, the wiry man said, smirking behind his mask. The Uchiha's temper went through the roof. They had just wasted 3 hours of waiting for their teacher, only for the said man to give them the day off. Why the hell did they have to get stuck with this person when they could have gotten any other sensei in the Fire Country? Naruto, on the other hand, had a smile that threatened to split his face into two. That meant he would have time to train with Irika-sensei, and to learn his bloodline limit. It was going to be so cool to learn the Hyakurai. He was giddy in excitement just thinking about it. That being said, continued the Jonin, Naruto, you and me have a meeting with the Hokage at around 3. Oh, and Sakura is now doing well, just to let you guys know. The blonde knucklehead sighed in relief knowing that his teammate was okay while Sasuke just shrugged. At least she was going to be alright. Kakashi then disappeared in a puff of smoke and left his students to their own devices. Anko carefully followed Mizuki everywhere he went, all the while making sure that she didn't mess up and give away her position. It hadn't been as easy as it first sounded. Mizuki was one paranoid bastard, and it showed with how often he looked over his shoulder. Then again, it wasn't paranoia if someone was after you. It was only by luck she was still tailing him without being caught. Despite all this, and her following him, his motives were still unclear. It wasn't until they got into a particular neighborhood that things became clear. Mizuki stopped on a particular roof that was overlooking a nondescript apartment complex. Shortly after they arrived, the blonde bane of Konoha walked in front of one of the doors and knocked, revealing Irika as he came to the door. She narrowed her eyes as she realized what Mizuki's goals involved: revenge against the ones that threw him in prison. Irika was leaning on the doorway with his arms crossed, raising an eyebrow as he stared at the blonde. His favorite student stood in front of him grinning from ear to ear, ready to learn about his sensei's limit. So, I guess you want me to teach you how to use Hyakurai, huh? Asked Irika. Why else would I be here? Said Naruto, bouncing on the balls of his feet. Maybe to say hi to your favorite teacher? There's that too, but please let me learn it, begged Naruto. The Kage-class Chunin just sighed in defeat. He doubted the blonde would leave him alone until he did anyways. Then again, the thought of being able to teach someone else outside of his own person how to use his limit was quite appealing. Knowing the hyperactive boy, he would have no problem keeping this secret, speaking that he did have his own limit. Alright, Naruto leapt into the air with a shout, but calmed down as his teacher continued, but there are some rules. 1. Don't tell anybody about this. I don't like attention and the village would definitely set their eyes on me if they found out. 2. Don't train your Hyakurai by yourself. If the city has a power outage, I'm not going to cover for you. The blonde bobbed his head up and down like a parakeet as he listened to everything. This limit had to be good if Irika-sensei wanted him to train with supervision. Don't worry, Irika-sensei, assured Naruto. I have to keep the Kyokugen secret anyways. Now that has been settled, muttered Irika, clapping his hands together, we're going to go and train at my favorite spot. So, follow me while I explain some things to you. Both of them slowly began to walk towards the training grounds, all the while Irika gave Naruto some lessons on his bloodline limit. Okay, he began as they walked next to each other. Hyakurai is unique because it allows me control of real lightning because of my higher than normal bioelectricity. Other minor abilities that it has are my bioelectricity sensing capabilities and my improved senses and reflexes. Naruto looked around as he walked along and noticed the people giving him loathing stares as he passed by. Deciding that he didn't want to think about the villagers, he turned back to Irika with a question he had since last night. Didn't you say something about the difference between real lightning and chakra lightning last night? Questioned Naruto. Ah, yes. There is some major differences, his teacher continued to explain. Chakra-based lightning works by homing in on chakra sources in its more uncontrolled form. Real lightning strikes things indifferently and with a much stronger charge. It's also much more difficult to control. What does that mean? Well, Irika scratched the back of his head as he tried to figure out how to give an example. Let me put it this way, a single chakra lightning bolt would strike only one of two kunai that were stuck into the ground, and would always hit one if it was to be loaded with chakra. But if a natural bolt is used, it would strike that kunai and maybe the other as well because it reacts indifferently. Now if I wanted to use jutsu that involved lightning, the pineapple-haired Chunin continued on, I could use my bioelectricity to do it, but it would be much harder to control, speaking that chakra really works like an extension of the body, while lightning is a pure form of energy. Naruto could now feel as if his head was going to blow up like a bomb at the information he was taking in. No wonder he didn't pay attention in class back when he was back at the academy, it would give him a headache every time he looked at the blackboard. The blonde stopped rubbing his head as they both finally got to the training grounds. Irika walked across from him and began to study his student under a microscope, trying to figure out how the Kyokugen worked. The mirror-like pupils Naruto showed him last night were just too complicated to be a dijitsu of some kind, but he kept his thoughts to himself as he continued to look onward. How do you copy limits? He finally asked. I just look at you, answered the blonde. Naruto pulled off his goggles and began to stare at his teacher, willing his eyes to copy the limit. His eyes quickly shattered and began to copy down the Hyakurai to add to his small arsenal. After a couple seconds, he gave a thumb up to his teacher, signifying that he copied it. Alright, before you begin to use it, I want to demonstrate something, he said with a smile. Make a couple of clones and have them come at me. His student just put on his foxy smile before he made his favorite hand seal. With a large puff of smoke, a dozen clones appeared around the original. All of them charged with a battle cry, but the real Naruto stayed back with a confused look as he saw Irika still wearing his own smile. It was when the small troop of blondes touched Irika that it happened. The only way Naruto could describe it was like a squirrel being stupid enough to not just touch a bug zapper, but to bite it. Half of the blondes unlucky enough to hold on and not let go began to smoke as static electricity shot through and away from their hair like the Raikiri that Kakashi demonstrated on the bridge. The lucky half of the group launched into the air. When they landed, their hair was smoking and sticking straight up while smoke poured out of their ears. All of them finally disappeared, leaving a gawking Naruto with memories of what it was like to grab a bug zapper. His teacher just snickered a bit before he explained. What you just witnessed was me letting go of only a portion of my control over my bioelectricity. I constantly have to suppress it or otherwise, well, you saw what happened at my apartment last night. He could now understand why Irika was a little hesitant to let him copy Hayakurai. It required a lot of control to get the full effect the bloodline offered. Otherwise, a lot of people would be pissed off about having a blown-up power grid. If anything, it made Naruto want to learn it more if it required such control. Now, his attention returned to his former teacher. I want you to access the Hayakurai however way you do, and I want you to get a feel for it. You'll see a difference when you begin using it. Naruto complied and willed for his body to change, making his eyes become the same color as Irika's. Irika was right, Naruto could see, feel, and hear a difference. All of his senses took a dramatic spike, and everything just seemed to slow down. Then his teacher came up next to him and tried to lightly punch him in the face. Out of instinct, he blocked the attack as it came within a foot of his face. As you can see, Irika's voice was now slower as well. Your brain is processing things much faster than normal, and your reflexes took a leap as well. This is all natural, but if you want everything to go back to normal, you must suppress your own bioelectricity. How do you do that? Naruto asked. Irika continued to explain in a slow voice. Well, first off, you need to try and calm down, and when you try to suppress it, it becomes a matter of trying to stay relaxed. Then when you do, you have to stay that way or otherwise it will automatically go crazy again. Oh, and until you get it under control, we're not going back to Konoha. What? That could take forever, yelled Naruto. It was almost noon and he doubted he could go without his favorite meal of ramen again. It was almost as if fate itself was against him having his favorite meal. Last night, he fainted when he discovered that his big brother-like role model had a limit and never got to have a bowl. Because of that, he was hoping to get one today. Yes, well, then you could pay all of the electrical damages, because I don't have that much money, countered Irika with a smirk. The blonde gave in with a growl and a pout and sat cross-legged on the ground to begin to try to relax. Irika sat across from him, keeping an eye on his student so that he wouldn't take off. Not that he could get away in the first place, he did put a good deal of Hunternine to shame in tracking. He lost his usual friendly smile as he felt the bioelectricity of two other people nearby. Irika didn't show it, but he was weary of their presences. Mizuki was madder than hell when he heard everything the teacher said. The scarred bastard could have beaten him that night. Irika must have pretended being weak that night. That's the only way Mizuki could have beaten Irika. The silver-haired Chunin now felt nervous about trying to get revenge on his targets. His former comrade had a powerful bloodline limit. There had to be a weakness, though. Irika was a walking, talking power generator and a master of lightning jutsu, if what he said was true. If that was the case. He smiled as he figured out a way around the electricity-generating bloodline limit. In the shadows behind the unsuspecting man, Anko felt her eyebrows go past her hairline. Irika couldn't seriously have that much power. The Irika she knew was friendly and wasn't as obsessed with gaining power, but here he stood with at least Kage-class skills. She blinked her eyes rapidly as she tried to process the information. That's what happened when she put her chakra into the card, Kakashi finished explaining to his commander. Kenzakutan muttered the sandame under his breath as he tried to think. Huh? Could you say that again? Asked the copycat. Her limit is called Kenzakutan, explained Sarutobi. It's an elemental limit that grants the user the ability to create the bi-element, metal. Much like Naruto when he uses Hayatan, she can manipulate Earth to a degree. Could you tell me how this is possible? I'm afraid I don't know much about elemental bloodline limits, the scarecrow answered honestly. The aged man lightly laughed. I thought you would have learned a couple things when you and Tenzo worked together. After all, he is a Mokutan user. Let me explain it to you. The sandame leaned his elbows against his desk as he went into his professor mode. All elemental limits have a dominant element. For instance, water is the dominant element in Hayatan, and thus, Naruto is able to manipulate it. It's when they shove the secondary element into the other chakra that they create the bi-element. If this is the case, continued the old-timer, the first element that appears on a chakra element card is the dominant element. Test it on Naruto and you would see this. As I said before, Sakura can manipulate Earth to a degree. Amazing are these limits, aren't they? Yes, they are. I never knew there was so much science behind them, agreed the former ANBU captain with a hint of awe in his voice. Every day he hung around with Naruto, his Byakugan chakra just seemed to be getting simpler and simpler compared to these other limits. The Kyokugen alone had so much behind it that it could easily outdo anything in complication alone. The elder ninja leaned back in his chair as he pondered about the recent happenings. He still needed more info on the Kyokugen, but there wasn't going to be anything like that here in Konoha. This limit was nothing ever heard of in the 5 great shinobi nations, not like the Rinnegan, which was the key to founding the ninja world and the basis of many legends that existed. He also thought about Naruto's parents. Minato had never shown such a trait, neither had Kushina, but then again, the two were really secretive about everything they did. One of them had to carry the gene, but he doubted it was the former Yandame, speaking he knew the Namikaze personally. The tomboyish Kushina was another story altogether. He knew about as much about her lineage as he knew how many stars were in the sky. If there was any information to discover, it would be from her side of the family. Kakashi, the said man, looked up from his ponderings as he heard the Sandame's voice. I have a mission for you, but you need to finish it before the Chunin exams. What is it? He asked with curiosity. It had been a while since he had taken a mission without his students involved. It would be quite refreshing, but what kind of mission could this be? Obviously, it had something to do with the Kyokugen. It's an S-class solo mission, said the Sandame, explaining the perimeters of the job. I would have you take a squad, but information about Kyokugen is simply too sensitive. You are to go to the debunked country of Whirlpool and find whatever information you can on our mystery Jujutsu. There is no information on this limit in any of the great nations, but this place quite possibly might be the birthplace of the Kyokugen users. The Sandame was thankful that Kakashi had no idea what Kushina's maiden name was, otherwise the secret would be out to one more person. But he could trust Kakashi with his life, and that was why he was sending him on this particular mission. Who will be my substitute for my students while I'm gone? The wiry man asked, remembering his job as a teacher. Why, Tenzo of course, answered Sarutobi with a smile. He could easily train Sakura and Naruto. Of course, our little mirror flower might want to copy Mokuton the first chance he could. So, who are to prevent him from doing so? We might as well, speaking he already has some skill in Hayaton. The other reason I'm doing this is because Tenzo would keep the Kyokugen secret without a hitch. Don't worry, your team will be in good hands. I believe you, said Kakashi with a smile behind his mask. Indeed, he too trusted Tenzo, having worked with him on a number of occasions while he was an ANBU captain. The Mokuton user had even saved his life several times if he remembered correctly. They also happened to be drinking buddies too. When do I leave? Asked the copycat. Tomorrow. Until then, I believe we should go and get Naruto so we can explain what we've been able to study about his limit. It happened faster than the blink of an eye. Naruto could feel himself get thrown to the side by Irika as a jet of water entered the clearing from the bushes, soaking his teacher. Naruto, change into another limit now, the scarred man ordered. The blonde quickly did as told as the water then started coming his way. Just as it hit, the water froze as Naruto quickly shoved wind element chakra into it. Both of them have then turned to the point of origin of the attack to see a laughing Mizuki step out of the bushes. That's the first time I've ever seen an elemental limit before, he said with a victorious smile. Mizuki team, shouted Naruto. Irika on the other hand remained calm as he stood up. He was now sopping wet, much to his chagrin. Mizuki, it seems that you managed to escape from prison. Naruto thought it was weird how his teacher could keep so cool. What brings you here? The silver-haired ninja chuckled lightly before he answered, I'm here on business. I hear that the demon had a limit and I'm here to steal something from him. The maelstrom took a step back as he heard what his former teacher told him. How the hell did he find out about it? Kakashi-sensei said he would keep it secret. Just how many people knew about his limit? Anko had been ready to jump in at a moment's notice, and was just about to do that, but refrained herself from doing said action when she heard that the Bane of Konoha, the most hated person to walk the streets of the village, had something many ninja considered valuable. "How did you know about that?" questioned Naruto in shock. "I overheard a very enlightening conversation," explained Mizuki. "But there was one little piece of information that just made my day. I heard that your blood can give anybody a limit if they could get their hands on it. That's what I'm going to do now." The blonde felt his eyes widen. He didn't know that the Kyokugen could do that. Where the hell did this guy get his information? In the bushes, Anko also felt her eyes widen as she too heard Mizuki's outrageous claim. This had to be some crazy made-up story, and Mizuki was stupid to believe it. There was no limit capable of creating other limits, it was simply impossible, right? She again felt compelled to stay where she was, milking the situation for maximum info. "There is no way I'm going to let you have my blood, bastard," yelled Naruto defiantly. "We'll see about that, demon." Naruto readied himself to retreat as Mizuki pulled off one of Fuma's shuriken and began to spin it like a buzzsaw. The blonde tripped backwards as he tried to get away, but as the criminal got to his target, he was abruptly stopped by Irika and the kunai he was holding. The silver-haired ninja haughtily laughed once more. "Don't even bother. I know your limit's weakness. Just like a power generator, if it gets wet, it would short and get destroyed. Am I right?" Irika gave a mighty shove with his knife that pushed his opponent off of him, momentarily silencing the arrogant traitor. Naruto looked towards his teacher with evident worry. If his teacher kept his Hyakurai on, then he would have gotten screwed over royally. That's why he wanted him to change limits. If he got wet with it on, there was no telling what would happen. "You're right," said Irika with a grim look. "If I had left my limit on, I would have been knocked unconscious from electrocution, but unlike Naruto, I can suppress it." "I know. I overheard everything you two talked about, but without your strongest ability, you're just an average chunin," said Mizuki as he smirked in victory. True to what Mizuki said, Irika's jutsu options had been severely limited. If he did activate Hyakurai even on accident, he would quickly get electrocuted by his own electricity. He grimaced as he realized just how strategic the traitorous bastard could be when he wanted to. The scarred chunin was just about to go through a set hand seals, but stopped as the sound of hissing filled the clearing. Mizuki looked down as he felt something coiling around his leg and gawked in horror as a set of vipers grasped his legs. All of them bared their fangs to discourage movement. Another much larger viper began to coil around his neck, and much to his fear it had even larger fangs. "Don't move," said a sadistic voice from behind him that he recognized as one Mitarashi Anko. "The smaller ones are pit vipers while the big one I'm holding is a fer-de-lance. One bite would lead to a slow and agonizing death." Naruto had never been so happy in his life to see such a sadistic ninja coming to his rescue. Irika on the other hand recognized her almost instantly. "Mitarashi Anko. Huh, I've never been so relieved to see you." "Yeah, well, I happen to be the neighborhood." Her smirk turned deadly as her attention went to the sweating Mizuki. "So, are you going to come quietly or am I going to have to drag you while you scream?" Much to everyone's surprise, he smirked. "Two things. 1, I've known you've been following me since last night. 2, do you think I wouldn't have thought ahead?" As soon as the last word left his mouth, he was replaced with a log with a puff of smoke. Before Anko could react, a shuriken had lodged itself into her shoulder, but as she pulled it out and turned to retaliate, she fell to the ground while her summons disappeared with multiple puffs. "Shit, it's poisoned," she said with a murderous glare aimed at the chunin in the tree above. "I coated that shuriken with a paralyzing toxin just for you," Mizuki said triumphantly. "You won't be able to move for a while, but don't worry, I'll deal with you soon enough. First things first, I've got business to attend to. Fire release, Immortal Phoenix Flame." The silver-haired criminal jumped away in time as 5 fast-moving fireballs came his way, making the branch he was on explode. He jumped across from Irika and charged forward with his Fuma shuriken spinning, but was stopped once more by another kunai his target was holding. "Did you really think that I wouldn't take my weaknesses into consideration?" asked the scarred man. I took the time to learn other moves outside of lightning jutsu, and it seems I was smart to do so. Both of them jumped out of the way as a cold wind came from their side. Mizuki turned his attention back on Naruto, remembering his other purpose for his visit. The blonde wasn't going to go down easy, though, as he made several clones appear and ordered them to attack. Mizuki stopped his charge as he began to slash through the clones like a hot knife through butter, but just as he cut the last one, Irika finished another set of hand seals. Wind release, great breakthrough. Irika's target leapt out of the way as a powerful gust of wind smashed the area where he stood. While he was in the air, he threw his first Fuma shuriken towards the other Chunin, but the attack was met by a glowing, white kunai that sliced through it. The two combatants turned towards Naruto to see that he had changed his limit again, having been given the 7 seconds necessary to change into Byaku chakra. Naruto charged another kunai and sent the bullet-fast weapon towards his traitorous teacher, but as the weapon made a hit, he was replaced with a log that splintered from the impact. Before Irika could react, Mizuki jumped out of the ground from behind him and, with his other spinning Fuma shuriken in hand, cut his target across the back. The scarred man fell forward, his back bleeding profusely. Irika, yelled Anko from her position on the ground, upset that she couldn't help in any way. Naruto just stared in shock. It was happening again, except this time his teacher was about to die. He had to do something, but what? How was he going to reach him in time? Then, he felt it again, the nightmarish chakra that infested him like a virus back on the bridge, the chakra that almost cost him someone he could call friend. This time, though, he welcomed it. Mizuki was threatening a precious person, he had to be punished for his crimes. The silver-haired traitor smiled maliciously as he was about to stab Irika and finally gain half of his revenge, but stopped as something foul swept over the area. Everyone turned to look at the source, only to see a flame-like chakra engulf the blonde maelstrom. Naruto began to change, his nails became claws as his birthmarks defined even more. His hair became messier while his canines became fangs. He looked as if he was seeing red as he stared at the shocked Mizuki. His dark eyes, the mark of a Byaku chakra user, shattered in the crimson, spinning Tomoe of a Sharingan instantly appeared in his eyes as the mirror shards fell away, the demonic chakra removing the single major weakness of the Kyokugen altogether. The goggles slipped off and were hanging around his neck, revealing his beautiful eyes for all to see. Just as Mizuki was about to fight back, Naruto roared, unleashing a concussive wave that pushed the Chunin across the field. Irika and Anko were spared as they were lying protectively against the ground. The blonde appeared above Mizuki and began to batter against him with sledgehammer punches. His target tried to fight back, but Naruto's Sharingan read everything like an open book, allowing him to counter and smash at Mizuki. The traitor wondered if he was going to get out of this alive. He thankfully found a way out the mess he was in as he pulled out a kunai and threw it towards the slowly standing Irika. Naruto seemed to regain his humanity as he watched the weapon in shock, but his teacher caught the weapon coming towards him without any strain. The demon-powered boy sighed in relief, but Mizuki took advantage of the distraction to give a small cut across the boy's arm. Naruto quickly jumped backwards while holding the cut, despite it healing almost instantly, but it was enough as the kunai the traitor held was now bloody at the tip. Now I will have a bloodline limit of my own, and when I do, I'll crush you all, roared Mizuki with an insane smile. It was at that moment that the Hokage and Kakashi dashed into the training area at full speed, trying to stop Mizuki before he allowed the blood to enter his body. Mizuki! Don't do it, yelled Kakashi frantically. Either way, it was too late as Mizuki stabbed himself in his arm. The wide-eyed scarecrow and the sandame skidded to the stop, unable to prevent Mizuki from unknowingly committing suicide. He laughed insanely, waiting to feel the effects of putting the Kyokugen user's blood into his body, but instead suddenly fell to his knees while gasping for air and holding onto his neck. A second later, he puked up blood onto the ground. Much to his horror as well as everyone else's that was playing witness, the blood began to smoke before it became black, poisoning the ground it touched. His eyes widened in fear at what he saw, and that's when the worst of it began to happen. Mizuki screamed in pain as he felt his blood begin to boil, bursting every vein, artery, and capillary contained in his body. Naruto looked on in horror as his demonic side receded. The Sharingan, no longer of use, disappeared, making his Kyokugen shatter once more and leaving him with his normal crystal blue eyes. His eyes widened even more as he heard a dark laughter ringing through the back of his mind. Kakashi and the Sandame slowed to a trot with pity in their eyes as they watched Mizuki scream through the worst 5 minutes that he was going to ever experience. Irika and Anko also looked on in unsung fear, wondering what was going on. Mizuki could then feel more excruciating pain as his skin began to tear, leaving gouges all over his body and leaking blackened blood. He screamed even more as he felt his organs being liquefied from the black, poison-like blood. Naruto took a step back as he watched in horror and disbelief that his blood had caused this. The way the man was dying, it was a fate that no one should be subjugated to. It was horrible to the point that no word could describe it. Finally, Mizuki stopped screaming as he lifted his head to the sky with widened eyes. Slowly, blackened blood began to drip from his mouth, then from his ears and nose, and then ending when he began to cry the foul liquid. With one final look towards the blonde, he fell forwards, forever staring with fear-filled eyes, scared of his own death. The blonde began to breathe hard as he saw Mizuki's dead body lying there, seemingly staring back at him with lifeless eyes. As tears of frigid liquid silver began to fall from his eyes, a set of comforting arms wrapped themselves around him. He didn't even look at the man, just from the tender touch he could tell that it was Irika. The famous copycat shook his head as he came up next to the body, being careful not to step into the blackened blood that was rapidly poisoning everything it touched. Sakura, you were very lucky, Kakashi told himself. Sarutobi stood next to him, looking at the fallen ninja with pity. Kakashi, you have no idea how right you are. Mizuki had just become victim to the most excruciating form of torture that the world could offer. The Kyuubi was truly the most sadistic son of a bitch to walk the planet. Only such a mind could conjure up something so awful. Make sure to dispose of the body so that none of this could be made known, he said in a voice that spoke both volumes of wisdom and experience before he turned his attention to Irika and Anko. He walked up to Naruto while doing some hand seals and put his hand on the crying blonde, making him fall asleep. I'm sorry, but right now he needs to rest, explained the Hokage. What just happened was something he wasn't ready to see. Irika nodded with his own pity in his eyes. I understand. Kakashi, when you are done, meet me at my office, but make sure that you pick up Anko on your way, ordered the Hokage as he and Irika began to make their way to the Hokage Tower, carrying a sleeping Naruto. Yeah, just make sure you don't do anything fishy, you one-eyed bastard, she threatened from the ground. The silver-haired ninja just rolled his single eye and began to do his work. A couple hours later, Irika just stared in disbelief at the Sandame while trying to digest what he just heard. Anko would have done the same, but unfortunately for her, she hung onto her seat like a limp noodle, the poison having not run its full course yet. Kakashi was leaning against the back wall, having already known all of the info shared. Naruto was on a futon, sleeping peacefully. Amazing, whispered Irika. No wonder it has to stay secret. If something like this got out. He was quickly interrupted by Anko, then shit would hit the fan. Not the words I would use, said the Sandame with his pipe smoking in his mouth, but yes, that is what would happen. But today's events have told me something else, the Kyuubi doesn't like to share this gift with anybody. It makes me wonder why, muttered Kakashi sarcastically. Sarutobi ignored him in favor of continuing his talk. The more demonic chakra Naruto has in his blood, the worse those effects get. Sakura lived mainly because Naruto wasn't pulling on the Kyuubi's chakra at the time, but there was enough of it there to threaten her life. Damn, this just keeps getting better, noted Anko. Funny, said Irika, something akin to worry crossing his face. It's more ironic than anything. It seems more like a cursed miracle the more we look at it. That it is? That it is, Irika, agreed the Hokage. Naruto felt as if he landed in a cold puddle of water as he stood up, soaking wet. Last he remembered, he was looking at Mizuki's lifeless body and then the old man did some kind of jutsu to make him fall asleep. He looked down at the knee-deep water, feeling awful that it was his blood that killed the man like that, but now he had to move forward. It wasn't good to dwell on the past, but now he knew not to let anyone get a hold of his blood in any way, shape, and form. Looking around, he saw that he was in something that looked like a cross between a sewer with all the leaky pipes going in and out of the walls, and one of those funhouses full of broken mirrors. The water itself was silvery, but clear enough that it could be distinguished as some form of liquid. He suddenly turned around as he felt a presence staring holes into the back of his head, but only found his reflection. It was hard to make out his image with it being so dark and the mirrors being broken. Still, that feeling of constantly being watched was nerve-wracking. With nothing else to do, he walked down the hall towards a red glow. Behind him, a set of stormy eyes watched his every movement from inside the mirrors. The place just seemed like a maze. He felt like he was going nowhere and fast. The only sign that he was making progress was the steadily growing red light. Finally, much to his relief, he entered the antechamber the glow was originating from. His eyes widened as he caught sight of the massive gate. Intricate seals lined the pillar-like bars, and a single piece of paper that had the kanji 4 seal on it was holding the huge gateway shut. Out of the darkness of the gates, a pair of human-sized ruby eyes stared at him, making him shift uncomfortably as he stood under their gaze. Slowly, they walked towards him and the person the eyes belonged to began to enter the light. The water rippled underneath a set of feminine feet walked on the surface of the liquid, but as the body came into view, he could finally see who it was. Much to Naruto's surprise, it was a girl about his age, stopping as a clear barrier came up in front of her and preventing whatever advance she had planned. Her hair was blood red and her skin was milky pale. She wore a simple dress with no bells or whistles. She was also well endowed, despite the age she looked. "It's about time you met me, fool," she said with enough malice to make the hair on Naruto's neck to stand on end. Who are you and where am I?" he asked, highly weary of the girl in the cage. She gave a smile that made the blonde's skin crawl, revealing her longer than normal canines. Looking at her, Naruto couldn't help but feel fear, despite her fragile appearance. There was just something about her that screamed for him to run for his life, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. "We're inside your mind, or the seal if you wish to be specific. If you don't mind me asking, don't you recognize the nightmare that ruined your life?" She smiled with mirth as she waited for his recognition. That's when it hit him about her identity. Contradictory to popular opinion, the Kyuubi was not the son of a bitch as people assumed, but rather, she was a bitch altogether. "You," he growled past his clenched teeth. She lightly laughed. "Yes. Me. Me. Me." Her eyes briefly glowed crimson and became slitted as she said the last word, "The bitch that killed everyone that lovely night that you were born." Naruto's eyes shattered, turning his vibrant blue eyes into broken mirrors, mimicking the environment around him. He wanted so much to jump in there and kill her. She was the root of every awful thing that happened to him. Looking at her smile, he could also tell that was exactly what she wanted. Calming down, he made his eyes return to normal. "Like what I had your blood do to Mizuki?" she asked with a sadistic smile. "That was you," he growled. It only caused her smile to become even more sadistic, if that was possible. "Oh yes. It worked so beautifully. It's worse than any form of torture on the planet and it only gets better and better with the more of my chakra you use." "Then I won't use it," the blonde simply said. She laughed again. "That's like saying you won't bleed. You don't fully grasp just how unique your limit is." "What do you mean?" Naruto asked with caution. "It's a transcendent bloodline limit," she explained with a smile, glad that she had got stuck with the container she did, a limit that only appears once every 15 generations. The one you happen to get stuck with not only copies limits, but can create new ones whenever someone comes into contact with your blood. But as you can see, I'm very selfish and don't like to share." She grinned evilly. "If only your blood was more poisonous when you're not using my chakra, then maybe that sad excuse of a kunoichi would have died when the blood got into her eyes." It had gotten the effect she wanted as Naruto felt his eyes widen in surprise at the sudden revelation. The Kyuubi then decided to rub salt on the wound. "Oh yes, she should have died. It was because of you she almost did." Her grin slipped as he looked at her with fury. The redhead succeeded only in pissing Naruto off. "You You almost killed her, he said, his Kyokugen shattering again. He felt his resolve about what he was going to do strengthen. I'll become strong enough so that I don't need your chakra. She scowled. In her anger, her eyes began to glow and become slitted. You're going to need me eventually, whether you like it or not. Don't worry, I'll always be here, she said as she receded back into the darkness, failing to usurp any control on her container this time. Naruto only narrowed his eyes as he saw her staring back at him loathingly with her ruby eyes. No matter what, he wasn't about to let her get away with anything. After all, this was the monster that laid waste to entire nations. Suddenly, the world twisted, and another second later, he was blinking the sleep out of his eyes. Everyone in the Hokage's office turned their attention to Naruto as he began to stir. Their talk just ended and everyone was about ready to go home. Naruto then sat up, still looking really tired. The Kyuubi is a bitch. The next thing that happened had everyone blinking in confusion. The blonde fell backwards, once more giving into the wiles of slumber.